Teachers of Reddit, what was the worst thing you had to confiscate from a student? My mom has had stories about what she's confiscated from lower elementary-aged students, K3, the usual prank items like whoopee cushions, sure, but one time a student was playing with this weird box. The box was locked, so she couldn't put it in the confiscated bin. She put it on top of a cabinet. About an hour later, it starts ringing, furiously. It took some doing to get the box open. Turns out, this kid's parent was a professional chef, so the kid had grabbed every timer in the house, set them for the max amount of time, locked the box, brought it to school, and played with it so it would get confiscated and ring loudly. Whole class erupted with laughter and screaming, a true agent of chaos. Not a teacher, but I'm half deaf and my music teacher took my hearing aid and refused to accept that it wasn't an earbud. Then he yelled at me for the rest of the class for not playing in tune. Couldn't exactly tell how well I was playing since I couldn't hear it. A gorilla mask, yes, dude put it on while my back was turned and facing the board. I laughed like hell, then took it for the day until his parents collected it.
My wife wants to be with other women. My wife recently came to me and said she wanted to see what I would think if she slept with other women. Apparently at work, she has a group of older guy friends that were talking about how when their wives get drunk they sometimes want to bring home a female and have intimacy. Meaning the two females have intimacy while the guy sometimes joins or just lets them two have fun. The guys at her job said they don't care because it's two women having intimacy and she's not with a man. A little context. I knew my wife had been with women in the past. She even dated a woman briefly in high school, but all of her other relationships have been with men. She said she has messed around with some of her friends in the past, kissing/intimacy. So I knew this was a part of her before we got married, but she said if she wanted to be with a woman she would have been in a relationship with a woman. She chose me. She says she loves me and wants to grow old with me. We have a 2-year-old daughter and a lovely home. We've been in a bit of a rough patch the last 2 years because she had complications when she gave birth, so we haven't had much intimacy in that time. We just recently started getting back on track. I don't know what to think. A part of me says let her do what she needs as long as it's in our house and she's not off doing it randomly. She also says it's only intimacy and it's not something she wants to do a lot but from time to time. Another part of me is traditional and I wish she only wanted me, and I find it cheating if she sleeps with a woman. If it was a threesome I'd be more inclined to do it. I told her that, but she said what if it was only them two? I don't know how I'd feel knowing my wife is in the other room getting pleasured and I'm sitting there alone. I need advice. I don't want to lose my wife and child over her having intimacy with a woman a few times, but I also just wish she wanted me and only me. I'm happy she came to me about this, but if I tell her no, will she resent me? Would it possible push her to do it behind my back? Even though she said she would never do that to me? If I let her, will it tarnish our relationship because it may hurt me? Or is something I don't like? And how far will this go if I do let her? Am I overthinking this? Is this a normal thing for girls? Do guys not care that their wife is sleeping with a woman as long as it's not a man?
I scratched the lot of tickets I was supposed to give a guy and won $1,000. Now, he's asking for my winnings. I'm part of a specialized friend group in painting. I was excited to join this group as I've been an avid hobbyist for over 6 years. I got to meet the members of the group and we all got along great. Finally, about a month after joining, I met Mike. He was pretty tough to get to know. He was inconsistent with showing up to the twice-a-month group meetings, so I didn't really get to know him. Throughout the years, Mike had an infamous birthday party that he would invite the group to, except for me because we are not close. The first year, I was okay with it because I had just joined and was about 2 weeks in. The second year, I forgot about it until everyone was talking and then asked me why I didn't go. I said, well, I wasn't invited. The third year was the same. That one stung a little, so I made it my mission to try and get to know him a bit more. However, it was never reciprocated and proved to be a difficult task. The problem was the guy ran hot and cold. He's overly dramatic on some days and quiet as a mouse on other days. You'll ask him questions about himself and he will either give you one word or vague answers. One time, he'll get mad if you hug him. But sometimes, he'll be in your face all excited telling you the latest new gadget he got. Then the next time you see him, he's the complete opposite. Super huggy and barely talks. This is not just to me but to everyone, and you never know which Mike you will get on any given day. I finally asked the group about him and their thoughts. They all said exactly what I said. I followed up with, why is he with this group? To which they answered that, technically, he was with the starting group members and had never left, so everyone just tolerated him. But I would still like to befriend him for us to get along well. For our meeting just before his birthday, I got him a card, wrote him a nice sentiment, and bought $10 worth of scratchers. I brought it with me, but he didn't show himself in our group meeting. I was disappointed and a little mad that once again he didn't show. So out of my frustration, I decided to scratch them off myself. To my surprise, every card was a winner. Technically won $1,012. I was so excited. He didn't invite me again on his birthday, but at this point, I'm no longer offended or hurt by it. I don't want to go. Now, it's almost mid-September and he's endlessly complaining on social media about how broke he is from the 2 parties he threw. His car needs repairs totaling $1,000 and he's basically crying for anyone to donate some money. I keep laughing at his posts because had he shown up to our meeting, he would have had the money to pay for his car repair. But that is not the end of his unfortunate missing luck of lotto tickets. Every year, we have a secret Santa gift exchange. This year I got him and he got me. The day came and as you would have expected, he didn't show up. I'm without a gift exchange and I just said in my head, screw it. I was prepared for this and bought something that I liked, which were more lottery tickets. I scratched them off in front of everyone, and to our surprise, I won $75. It was very exciting. Everyone started to record and blasted it on social media. I think he saw the video on Facebook. That's why he contacted me this morning saying that he couldn't make it last night because his dog was sick and he had my gift ready. I know that he is lying because he posted on his account that he was out with friends that night. He was excited to receive the $75 because he really needed it. I didn't respond. Last night, we had a special meeting and he shows up, gives me a big hug, and chats in the friendliest way ever, which he has never done with me before, so it just looks and feels like someone completely sucking up. He eventually asks me directly for the money and doesn't even have the gift he's supposed to give me with him for an exchange. Him, okay, great. So where's the money I was to win for my gift exchange? Me. Oh, don't worry about the gift exchange. I'm fine. And I walked away. That's all I said. It left him dumbfounded. He tried to complain about it to the others in the group, but they were just not having it. With no collaboration, they all said basically the same thing: you hardly ever show up, and when you do, you are not 100% in. You rarely talk to her when she is here, and now you want her to hand over $75 for a gift you were not even here for? She had nothing to open and was left out. She owes you nothing.
Redditors, what started off as a small lie but then snowballed into "this is my life now." I didn't want to go to dinner with the gang from work, including my boss, so I told them I was having dinner with my wife and her parents. I lied. I get home, wife wants to go out to dinner, so we head to the restaurant, and just as we're getting near the door, I see the work gang with my loudmouth boss all piling out of their cars. What are odds of us picking the same restaurant? Shit. Busted. There was an old couple walking into the restaurant in front of us. I held the door for them, and insisted they join us for dinner. They were quite perplexed, but accepted my offer of a free dinner. It was the most uncomfortable dinner ever. They had no clue who we were, none of us had any shared interests. They rushed through dinner, thanked us, and got the hell away from what I'm sure they thought were a couple of weirdos.
What is the best revenge you have got on your parent? My mother abandoned us, so we abandoned her back. When I was 18, I found out my mom was messaging someone online who lived in another state. One day she decided to fly over there and meet him. She was supposed to stay for a week, and at first I thought it was awesome that I'd have the whole house to myself, but then 1 week turned into 2, then 3, then eventually it had been a month since I last saw my mom. Everyone kept asking me when she'd be back, but she never gave a definitive answer. After about 2 months, I got a call from her telling me that she was staying over there and that I was now in charge of the house, which meant I had to pay all the bills by myself. I refused, but she insisted I pay them since she was no longer living here. I told her she needed to come back and do something with the house because it was under her name and not my responsibility. After that, she hung up on me and wouldn't answer my calls or texts no matter how many times I tried to reach her. I ended up packing my things and went to my dad's house. When the bills started rolling in, she sent me all the links to payment sites, but I ignored them. When she saw I didn't end up paying them, she called me screaming, telling me I was irresponsible and that I'd get in trouble for not paying them. I told her once again that those bills weren't my responsibility, especially since I was already living with Dad now. She said she hopes I end up homeless on the streets and hung up. She tried to get other family members to pay the bills because she didn't want to sell the house. She gave up and ended up coming back in order to sell the house. In the time she was here, we barely had any contact, and when she eventually moved back to be with her new boyfriend, we talked even less. I only knew how her life was going through social media. Our family was devastated that she had abandoned us, and although it took some time, we were able to move on. It's been 5 years since she left, and I recently got a message from her asking if she and the new family she created could come stay with me. She went to a couple other family members first but was rejected each time. Apparently she has no support system over there and needs help because she's a stay-at-home mom and her husband got fired. They're having trouble making ends meet and want to stay with someone until they get back on their feet. I rejected her as well, saying I have no room and also wanted nothing to do with her. That didn't go over well, and now she's blasting our family on social media saying we're abandoning her in her time of need. It's ridiculous that she doesn't see the irony in her own words. She texts us nonstop saying how we have a duty as her family to help, but I explained we didn't know her anything because the day she abandoned us was the day she lost her family. She told her husband, and now he won't stop sending us texts about what an awful family we've been. We've since blocked them, and 2 weeks have passed, but things have been silent on her end. My boyfriend always told me I smelled terrible, but the truth is way worse. I've been dating my boyfriend for a little over a year, and most things have been awesome, except for one issue. Every single day, he tells me I stink and that I have body odor. When we first met, I was all clean, showering daily, using regular deodorant, and brushing my teeth 3 times a day. But now, I'm super paranoid about smelling bad, so I shower twice a day, use strong deodorant all the time, put on perfume, and brush my teeth after eating or drinking anything except water. I've lately been feeling like I'm going crazy with all this. I didn't think I smelled bad before, and even now, I don't believe I do, but he insists on this daily. My friends and family have never detected any smells on me, not even when I explicitly asked. I finally got too paranoid to stomach it, though, so this morning, I waited for my boyfriend to say something so we could talk. Less than an hour after waking up, he said, "God, you stink. But guess what? I had already showered and put on deodorant. I couldn't take it anymore, so I snapped and asked what exactly he was smelling, because I'm seriously one of the cleanest people around. And if I still smell bad to him, maybe we should just break up. Then he got all panicked and upset, and finally, he told me that his dad always said this to his mom. Apparently, his dad told him it's a way to make a woman stick around, feel low, and not cheat, because if her self-esteem was low enough, then she wouldn't even be able to think about other men. Anyway, he's packing his stuff and moving out of my house today.
I was a Victoria's Secret model. This is what they don't tell you. I was hired for Victoria's Secret in June of 2019, and I'm still haunted by what my onboarding process looked like. The PR team for Victoria's Secret is doing a really good job of making us seem a lot more inclusive and respectful about body types, but don't think for a second that there's any actual body positivity. The day I was hired, a guy came and took all my measurements, and I mean all of them. Then, he gave me a list of targets and said what measurements needed to go up and what measurements needed to go down, because even though the body types you see in our magazines are a lot more varied than a decade ago, they all adhere to a very specific set of proportions. The biggest thing that my company wanted me to change was my chest. My boobs were B cups, which look normal for my body, but they wanted me to increase the circumference of my boobs by 2 inches. This literally seemed impossible without plastic surgery, and I straight up told the guy who asked me to fix my measurements that there was no way I'd be able to increase my chest size. His response? Check your email. So, I did. And there, in my email, was an unironic, honest, sincere list of supplements that my company expected me to take, just to grow my honker size. The crazier part? Those supplements worked. I went up an entire cup size in the span of 2 years. I had to quit Victoria's Secret, but my agent has me working with a new designer who is literally buying my supplements for me because he's so picky about which brand works best. This bee pollen supplement from Bee Vitality called Grow My Girls that, frankly, has been growing my girls more than ever before. Before all these supplements, my body looked much more normal and stereotypical, and now, people can tell that I'm a model at first glance because my body looks so much curvier, because this industry is literally supplementing its 90% of its girls to a new, boobier body.
What is the most out-of-touch thing your boss has ever done at a meeting? At 4 p.m. he told us to compile a report and action plan ready for tomorrow's 8:30 a.m. meeting. Now to do this properly would take each of us a full day's work. All 7 of us protested, and asked for more time. I asked when he expected us to find the time, and he told us to work on it that night at home. I openly said sorry, that's unreasonable. I have a 90-minute drive home, then I'll be cooking dinner, and then helping with showers and homework. When that's done I have about an hour before I'm ready to fall asleep. His reply? Get your wife to make the dinner and shower the kids while you work on the report. And then he left the room. So we all united and decided not to do it. He went off his tree at 8:30 a.m. the next morning when nothing was done. I had a word to the very nice HR lady about what he said, along with a list of people in the room who witnessed it. When he blew his gasket and wanted HR to issue warnings, she simply told him to reschedule the meeting for the following day, and let us work all day uninterrupted to prepare for it, in work time.
I offered to let my mom live with me, under the exact same terms I lived with her as a teen. I don't know why in God's good name my mom thought I would be the one to come too. We don't get along. I went to live with Dad at 16 because she told me she hated me and kicked me out. My older brother, the golden child, I know for a fact has a spare bedroom she could sleep in now that she's losing the house. My mom's situation is entirely her own fault as well, which makes this all the more annoying. She and my stepdad bought a 7-bedroom house 10 years ago, right after she left her job of 20 years to work at some dumb startup that was out of business only 3 years later. My stepdad spent the last years of his miserable life bedbound because he ignored every doctor telling him to stop shoving his face full of food at every waking moment of the day. So, he passed away 500 pounds and in misery. I was more than fine with this, by the way. Well, when he passed away early this year, it pretty much drained the last of the money my joke of a mother had remaining, and now the bank's taking the house back. So she shows up at my door for some reason, after mistreating me since I was a kid, and ignoring me unless she wanted something since she married that thankfully deceased land whale. She had the nerve to ask to live with me. It's only me and my husband in our 2-bedroom house, sure, but that spare bedroom is his office, the basement's my art studio, and the couch in front of the fireplace is for our lovely cats. There is no room for the wicked hag anywhere in this house, but I knew this opportunity would never come again, so I told her she could live with us, if and only if she decided to follow the house rules. 1. All electronics were to be turned off by 6 p.m. If she was caught with any after that, they would be taken away and sold at the next yard sale. 2. Bedtime was 7:30. If I caught her up, I would take away all of her clothing for the week. 3. She may only shower for 5 minutes, once every 3 days. 4. All chores must be done the moment she wakes up. If I roll out of bed and they are not, she will not be getting meals for the day. 5. She must make sure she is alert at all times. If I and hubby need something done, it is to be done at that moment, or else she will lose her bedding privileges for the night. 6. She will be in charge of cooking one meal each day that I choose. If it is not made to my liking, she will not be allowed to join us and instead will eat the cheapest frozen meal available. 7. I will be reading all her mail, text messages, and emails. I will give her the ones I deem acceptable communication under my roof. 8. Her car will be my own personal travel car. She will also drive me wherever I want. She will still have to pay for gas. And last but not least, if at any point she displeases me, I will be calling my brother up to pick her up from a nearby gas station. I will get to choose what she takes to put in a torn-up backpack before dropping her off without looking back. She called me a monster, told me these conditions were inhuman, and asked if I was insane. These were the exact conditions I lived under for years as a teenager, the exact conditions she tormented me with for years until she finally let me go live with the one parent that loved me, and these would be the conditions she would suffer under if she dared to ask me to home her worthless, joy-sucking soul. I don't know where she went after she stormed out of my house. My brother called me and told me I have the biggest balls in the family for the stunt I pulled. From the sounds of it though, none of the spawn want the brood mother to live with them. I hope she finds a nice park bench to stay on.
What is something a friend did that accidentally turned you on? I had a guy friend ask me to be his date to a friend's birthday party at a bar in Hollywood. It was last minute, so I quickly did some makeup and got dressed up in some club attire and heels. When he picked me up, he came to the front door, walked me to his car, opened the door for me, and held out his hand to give me a lift into his car. I'm flushed at this point. My friendship with this dude was very much frenemy vibes. He made fun of me all the time, and I usually insulted him back harder, and then he'd double over in shock and we'd laugh. I was not used to him being nice to me at all. We park and he continues being a damn gentleman. He paid for parking. I invited you out. What kind of guy would I be if I let you pay for parking? He helped me get out of the car. He held my hand as we walked. Everything. I was so confused. Then we're walking on the sidewalk to the bar and I'm walking closest to traffic. He puts his hand on the small of my back and guides me to switch places with him. More confusion, but now also butterflies. I get to drink since he's D&D and he pays for me. We dance together all night and he's grinding on me for every song. Like a gentleman, but that's just how dancing was back then. When we sit down to rest, he brings me close enough to talk to me over the noise and his lips graze my ear every time. He lingers near my neck for a second too long and says I smell amazing. Your girl is flooding. After he drove me home, we sat in the car talking about the night and then it gets quiet for a minute. I'm tipsy, so of course I tell him, this felt like a date. I feel like we should kiss or something. And he leans over, smiles, and says something like, why not? I had never been kissed at that point, so I'm just sitting there blushing. And then he laughs and says that even though he's gay, his mom raised him to treat women well and he's glad I felt taken care of. He walked into my door and hugged me goodnight. I had a friend crush on him for a year after that.
My wife dropped a bombshell. I'm 25, married and I am a dad. When I first started dating my now wife, our intimate life was amazing. It was dirty and crazy, anywhere and at any time. But as the relationship progressed, the lovemaking became stale and my wife's intimate drive seemed to drop to almost non-existent. The lovemaking now, for lack of better words, is boring and stale. There's no real passion to it, no romance, and it just feels so mechanical. If she isn't in the mood, there is no chance I can sway her. No candlelit home-cooked dinners, rom-coms and massages can change her mind. But if she's in the mood, it's then and now. It doesn't matter if I'm in the middle of something. She knows I'll drop what I'm doing, but even then, it's right to it. No before action, no hands, no mouths, no romance, no passion. It's always just a quickie. Once all is said and done and she's happy and satisfied, I can usually expect nothing for the next 3 or 4 days or even weeks. It is a complete shift from how things used to be. I never really knew why things changed. That was until last night. We had a party, and after everyone left she decided she wanted to play 21 questions. It started off innocent enough, but she'd had a few drinks, so for one of my questions I tested my luck and decided to ask, why don't we have the kind of love-making we did earlier in our relationship? Her response wasn't what I was expecting. She said, I never had a high intimate drive. I've never been crazy or dirty. I just did whatever you wanted at the start because I wanted you and didn't want you deciding it wasn't going to work out between us. When I knew you weren't going anywhere, I didn't really have to keep it up. So I said, so all of it was just a ploy to have me? That's when she said, well, your best friend wanted you too. She never told you, but I knew she was going to soon. If she did, I knew you'd be with her. It wasn't much of a competition. She was better looking. You knew her for over 10 years, so you were already very close. And we both know she had a high intimate drive too. You were both love-making addicts. You'd have chosen her in an instant. I didn't have much of a chance, but I wanted you. So I made a move before she did, gave you exactly what you wanted. And when she wasn't in the picture anymore, I didn't have to worry. So I said, so you knew the whole time? She shrugged and said, yeah, she told me she wanted to pull you aside and tell you how she felt about you when she felt the time was right, so I got to you first. But what does it matter now? It's all in the past. She's in her own relationship, and you two don't even speak anymore anyway. We're married, have a house and a daughter. I've got what I wanted, so I'm happy. I didn't really know how to respond, so I just let it slide and we kept asking each other questions until she finally fell asleep. But it made me think to myself, my wife was right. I'd have chosen my best friend without hesitation. I'd always had feelings for her, I still do, but I was in an emotionally dark place and I didn't want to risk jeopardizing our friendship or making things awkward if she didn't feel the same way about me. If I'd known she felt the same way, things would have been very different. Now it all made sense to me, why my friend of now 15 years had suddenly become so distant, why she disliked my wife so much, and why we rarely ever see each other. As for my wife, she's right, it's been 8 years, we're married, have a house, have a kid, my best friend has moved on, she's got her own life, and although I've always had feelings for her, it's been too long to say she even feels the same way. I'm not the best husband, but I've tried to be. I work hard, make sure all my family's needs are met before my own, but at some point I decided if my needs weren't being met at all, I'd satisfy them on my own, and as bad as it sounds, I don't feel as bad for cheating on my wife. I know two wrongs don't make a right, I'm not trying to justify it. But it does make me wonder what things would have been like. Would I have been happier with my best friend? Or was my wife right? Am I just a love-making addict, and would I have eventually cheated on my best friend too? When the teacher wrote "see me after class" on your paper, what did they say to you? In my first quarter of community college, I failed the chemistry midterm. The teacher stapled a paper to the test that, essentially, said, "I need to meet with several students at the same time, including you. Please circle the below listed days/times you are available and I'll let you know tomorrow when your office appointment is. Please return this slip to me before leaving class today." He added a half dozen days/times. When I got to his office at the appointed time, there were 4 other students who graduated the previous year from my small high school. The teacher told us he knew we were from the same high school, and that we had all failed the midterm. He asked about our high school chemistry class, which was a prerequisite to his college chem class. We described our high school class. We covered only a small amount of actual chemistry during the year. For most of the class time each day, the teacher told stories about his Marine Corps days and about various sports that he participated in. Class quizzes had more questions about those items than about chemistry. The one and only chemistry experiment we did all year was when we dropped a penny into a test tube full of hydrochloric acid, caught the hydrogen bubbles with an inverted larger test tube, and lit a match to the test tube. It gave off a loud pop when the small amount of hydrogen exploded. After expressing great sorrow about what we told him, the college teacher told all of us to purchase a specific college outline book on chemistry. He urged us to read every page in the book and to solve every problem at the end of each chapter. Answers were at the back of the book so we could check our work. He told us that if we did all that, as well as keeping up in his class, we would probably do well on the final. All 5 of us did what he recommended. All of us earned A's on the final exam, and all of us received B's for the course. Beginning 10 years later, I taught high school chemistry for a few years. Hopefully, I became a better chemistry teacher than I had in high school.
What is your scariest experience? My father's ex-girlfriend tried to make me take her medication without me knowing. She had kidney problems, was waiting for a transplant and had to go 3 times a week to dialysis. So she was on a lot of pills and things, was going to a psychiatrist too, and there was a lot of food and drinks she couldn't take like Coca-Cola. For her, any kind of soda was a 1 glass once a month kind of thing unless she wanted a trip in an ambulance. And I have always been a huge soda fan. At that time I had a glass with lunch and another one with dinner. We always had extra bottles and I was the only one who drank them at my home. So one day I went to take a sip and surprise, there's no soda in the fridge. I go for one of the extra bottles, and there's none. That's the first signal something was wrong, because my father was very adamant that the pantry had to be always full. I checked the fridge and there was a bottle, one of those 0.75-liter bottles we never, ever bought. My father's girlfriend was already a meanie at the time, acted with me as if I was 3 instead of 19, had managed to upset my sister so much she was living somewhere else, and I had the impression she was trying to do the same with me, trying to fight with me for little things because she knew my father would always take her side. So when I saw that bottle I decided I wouldn't touch it. No way, Jose. 2 weeks have gone by and the bottle is still there, untouched, and even the soda I had bought myself just disappeared in thin air a day after. Finally my dad asks about the small bottle, saying if it had gone bad or something, or if he could take it. He said all of this while looking at me, because, again, I was the soda drinker and the girlfriend couldn't have almost any because of her kidney. And then that woman fans herself all worried and goes, "Oh no, no no no, you can't drink it. I have put my medicine on it so it's easier to take without feeling its taste. Do not touch it." I swear I felt pale. This woman was on a ton of things, serious things. Anyone could have taken that bottle, and I know my father didn't buy her story, but he just smiled, nodded and said he would buy me some soda the next day because he had noticed there wasn't any left. So, just to be clear, she couldn't drink soda. Her medicine was with strict dosage because it wasn't just some ibuprofen, and we are talking about somebody who painted her whole water bottle black with messages like "Don't drink poison, Sarah's propriety," just so she could track properly how much water she took every day. And this woman decided to take her medicine with soda, not telling anyone, in a non-marked bottle. At the same time all the rest of the soda disappeared. All of it made me start to think and put some things together, like the way I always felt sick after she took care of making dinner, and the way she put all the food on a central plate except mine, something that at first I took as a favor to me because I prefer it that way. My husband of 2 years cheated on me, and I got the most bittersweet revenge. My ex-husband, 25, and I, 24, got married 3 years ago. We were both very young and new to adult life when we got engaged after we graduated high school. We had been together since 11th grade. Our friends and family always complimented how well we worked together, and we took pride in our mature and loving relationship even when we were teenagers. We never spent a night away from each other when we got our first apartment at 21 and 20. We had a rule: never go to sleep angry. Always resolve any issues before going to sleep. And that worked for us, so I thought. It is important to note that we come from very different backgrounds. My ex-husband grew up with middle-class parents and had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. He was the youngest. He has always been very popular and athletic. My parents split up when I was 4, and I moved in with just my dad. I was an only child and I was homeschooled until high school. I met Milo, my ex-husband, the first day of 10th grade and we instantly hit it off. This all ties into the events that took place nearly a year ago. One night in May, me and Milo got into an argument that had to do with me being careless with my money. Milo was upset with me for spending funds I was planning on putting toward another vehicle on buying him rather expensive birthday gifts. Of course, I was apologetic yet still felt like I had the right to spend my money however I pleased. The argument was necessary and both sides were reasonable in my opinion. That night, we had settled down for bed and I began to forget about the whole thing. At around 2 a.m., I woke up in a cold sweat after having a nightmare. I rolled around, still in and out of consciousness, and stretched my arm out to grab my husband for comfort. This wasn't out of the ordinary. What was out of the ordinary, though, is that my husband was not there. The light to our bathroom was off and the door was open. I didn't hear him down the hall. I instantly turned on the light and got up. I walked to our living room and peered out the window, realizing our car was gone. I called him a few times in hope of reaching him and finding out where he went, but they went to voicemail. I then just sat on the couch and drank some coffee to keep myself awake until he came home. At 4:30 in the morning, I saw headlights in the reflection of my TV. I patiently waited for Milo to walk through the door. It took nearly 5 minutes of continuous banging around and keys jangling for him to waltz back into our apartment. He was completely wasted. He had lipstick up and down his face and neck, and his pants were unbuttoned and unzipped. Milo has never gone out without my knowledge and has definitely never gotten this drunk. The conversation that followed went something like this: Milo, what the hell are you doing? What the heck do you have all over you? Baby. Go back to bed. Tell me where you were and who you were with. Go back to bed, now. He was progressively getting angrier and wouldn't answer any of my questions. He was slurring his words and I was getting scared for my safety. It took almost an hour to get the whole story, but he admitted that he hadn't gotten over our argument and he felt sad that we lost our connection. He went out with his friends to a bar where he met a girl named Sarah, or Sasha, he can't remember, and they hooked up. He started crying and telling me he had only done it because he was pretending it was me and he needed affection. I wasted no time in grabbing my phone and calling my dad to pick me up. I left without saying a word to Milo, and went home with my dad. I wasn't going to tell anyone what had happened, but I instantly started crying when I got in the car and told my dad everything. He consoled me and told me I was free to stay at his place for as long as I needed. I went straight to bed when I got back, and woke up to over 20 missed calls and 100 plus texts from Milo. I responded with a message that read, "I'll be back tomorrow to grab my things. Let Sarah, or Sasha, know that she is now responsible for you and paying half of the rent. Divorce will be discussed soon when I get my financial situation under control." We officially divorced 6 months ago. I never tried to hear him out. The love I had for him disappeared the second he walked through that door. My life has since gotten so much better. I bought my own apartment, a new car, and met someone new. This is where the bittersweet revenge comes in. I was at a cafe one morning before work to grab a black coffee as I always do. I took a seat and read an article on my phone as I waited to leave for work since I had come in early. "Jen, is that you?" I looked up to see who had just recognized me at 6:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. My stomach flipped at who I saw. Yes it is. You're Ledger, right? Ledger was Milo's oldest brother. He never came to family gatherings, and I had only met him a handful of times during me and Milo's relationship. "Yes, ma'am. How have you been, since the divorce?" His voice was soft and his eyes were very inviting. I pulled out a chair for him. "I'm doing better than I thought I'd do. What brings you here at this hour?" "Just grabbing my early morning cup of coffee." "Really?" "No. I was walking from my building to the parking garage and saw you in the window. Thought I should step in and see how things are going." The rest of the morning we talked about everything regarding Milo and our families and each other. He's older, almost 30, and yet I do feel like we have some sort of a connection. We're meeting for lunch tomorrow. We exchanged numbers and have been sending some admittedly flirty texts back and forth for a few weeks now. Ledger mentioned that Milo found out about it and was not pleased in the slightest, although he's had many girlfriends since the divorce. This is what I have to ask you, Reddit. Should I go out with Ledger or would that be too hard on me in the long run? I like the thought of this freaking Milo out. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to be too close to his family again. So, what should I do?
Am I the a-hole for deciding to not sleep with someone after I saw them naked? I'm a 20-year-old guy, and last week, I went to my friend's birthday party. It was very chill, and there were some new people I hadn't met. We played games, had cake, and then I started chatting with one new girl, Rachel. She seemed cool. After like 15 minutes, some of them wanted to go clubbing, but Rachel asked if I wanted to hang at her place, to which I said yes. So we talked for about an hour, and somehow we got on the topic of intimacy. Turns out, we're both virgins. I thought she was cute, so I went for a kiss, and she was into it. We were kissing for a bit, then she started taking off her clothes. Here's the thing, she looked different than I thought. Her clothes were baggy, and when she took them off, she was not what I expected. I'm not some super buff dude, and I don't expect every girl to look like a model. But at that moment, I realized I wasn't into Rachel. I didn't know what to do, so I said she looked beautiful even though I didn't really feel it. We kissed more, but the more we did, the more I knew I didn't want to go further. So I stopped and said I was too anxious to continue. She tried to calm me down, but I said I was too scared. We stopped, and I left. I'm at the train station now, waiting to go home. I gave Rachel my Insta, and she said to have a safe trip. Honestly, I feel kinda bad. I'm glad I said no, and I didn't want to do something I didn't want to do just to be polite. But I still feel guilty. I told a friend, and he thought it was funny how I sounded. He said I was a bit of a jerk, but it's good I said no. My mom wants me to spend a week with my grandfather, who is a pedophile. I apologize for any formatting errors or mistakes, as I am new to Reddit. I want to share my story, although it's difficult for me to find the right words. Since I was about 5 years old, my 16-year-old grandfather has been molesting me. He used to visit our family every summer from my mom's home country until I turned 12. During his stays, he would spend a week or two in different family members' houses, except ours because of our dogs. I don't want to go into too much detail, but he would touch me inappropriately, even in front of others at times. When he found a chance to be alone with me, he would grab my shoulders, kiss me, and once he even told me to go to his room at night while everyone else was sleeping. I was terrified that if I didn't go, he would come looking for me and wake up my brother, who shared a bed with me. The fear of getting in trouble kept me compliant. When he stopped visiting, I was relieved, thinking I would never have to see him again. However, as I grew older, my dad expressed a desire for us to visit his parents in my mom's home country, the same place my maternal grandfather lives. My older brother and I went for a week this time, and it was genuinely amazing. My grandparents, aunt, and cousins were all kind and loving, making it a wonderful experience, except for one day when my mom insisted we spend it at my grandfather's house with her side of the family. It was devastating to see him again, to put on a fake smile and hug him after all the disgusting things he had done to me. It made me feel sick, and it completely ruined the trip. The fear of him trying something haunted me throughout the entire visit. Now, my parents are considering sending us back for a month. My mom wants me to stay with her side of the family for a week, but I cannot bring myself to do that. I won't subject myself to that experience again, but I'm unsure how to prevent it. My mom and her family are aware of the abuse, yet they choose to do nothing about it. My mom has made it clear that she wants me to keep quiet. When I was 10, two of my aunts and uncles confronted my grandfather after one of them asked my mom why I was afraid to hug him. My mom, upon discovering this, scolded them and defended my grandfather. She wanted them to leave him alone. I know this because she confided in me while we were driving. She then advised me to avoid him, ignore him because he was just an old man. Later, one of my aunts brought her daughter to play in our pool. As I walked out in my bathing suit, my grandfather noticed me, smirked, sat up, and called me over. I fled the house, and my aunt, upon seeing me, made a remark insinuating that my grandpa was happy to see me dressed that way, and she laughed. I feel lost and unsure of what to do. My mom doesn't know the full extent of what he did, and my dad is ignorant of most of it because he was always working overtime, and my grandfather would never act out in front of him. How can I avoid going on this trip? I don't want to tell my parents the whole truth about what happened. I'm afraid my mom loves my grandfather more than she loves me. I have no one to confide in, and I desperately need advice. I'm miserable because I cheated and my wife got her revenge. I cheated on my wife 3 years ago. She agreed to forgive me if we opened the marriage, but now I live in agony every day. So basically my wife, 39, found out that I, 41, have been hooking up with a woman I met online who lived 2 hours away. When the woman visited, we checked into a hotel. This went on for 3 months and we had met a handful of times when my wife caught us. She was waiting in the hotel lobby and saw us coming down from the room. She left me the next day. We separated for 8 months and they were terrible on all of us, especially the children, 9, 7 and 3. We started talking about getting back together. My wife thought that since our intimate life wasn't enough for me, and that she was sure I would cheat on her again, we might as well open the marriage. I told her no because I've learned my mistake, but she wouldn't waver. I relented. We decided, she did, not to tell each other the when, where and with whom. Now, over 2 years later, we are back to normal on the outside. On the inside I'm dying a little each day. Every time I see her happy I wonder if this is just her old bubbly self or if she was thinking of someone. She is a very beautiful woman and I'm sure she has no problems finding men who want her. Whenever she takes a shower after coming home, whenever she rejects my advances, I think that she has been with someone and that unalives me. I have tried to discuss closing the marriage again, but she shuts these attempts very quickly with the divorce card. Before all this happened we had amazing intimacy several times a week, but now, we have probably done it 4 to 5 times these past 3 years. She demands I use latex and she refuses to let me eat her or make her finish in any way. I stopped asking because intimacy is painfully bad now. I haven't slept with anybody else because the look on my wife's face in that lobby still makes me sick with guilt. I don't know how much more I can take. I love my wife and I want to spend the rest of my life with her. Will she ever stop punishing me? Have you ever forgiven a cheating spouse and stopped punishing them? What's going on in her head? Have you ever accidentally met a celebrity who went above and beyond to help you? About 5 years ago, I had a wedding to go to in Chicago. I bought a gorgeous, long formal dress, and being that I am pretty short I needed to get the dress tailored. I called the local tailor in my town and was quoted $18 to fix my dress. When I arrived at the tailor The man began measuring and drawing with chalk on my dress. At this time a handsome, impeccably dressed man came into the shop. I noticed that he seemed kind of boisterous with a look at me personality, but he was in no way rude or unkind. I just assumed he was a rich man that was used to people catering to him and being the center of attention. But he was not off-putting or anything. I did notice that the tailor totally stopped taking care of me so he could fawn and cater to the rich man instead of me, even though he was in the middle of marking my dress when the man came in. I did find the tailor extremely rude for this behavior, but I was so excited about my new dress I just put up with it and did not cause a scene. After several long minutes the tailor finally returned to me and began to tell me that my dress was going to cost $100 to him, even though he had quoted me $18 over the phone and none of the stats for the dress had changed. He only needed to take it up a half an inch. I immediately knew he was trying to rip me off and I began to get quite upset. Then the handsome stranger, overhearing that I could not afford to pay $100 for my dress to be tailored, came to the rescue and offered to pay for the dress himself so my night would not be ruined. I thought it was so sweet and I introduced myself to him. The man put out his hand and introduced himself as Michael Irvin. I am not a sports fan, but of course I knew that name right away from Dallas Cowboys fame. I was very embarrassed that I did not know who he was on site, but he was so sweet and even wrote his autograph on the back of the receipt of my dress that he just shelled out $100 for. He then stood around and chatted with me and my ex-husband for about 20 minutes like we were old friends. I will say he seemed a little turned off that we did not know who he was right away, but he was just as sweet as could be. Now the kicker is that whenever I came to pick my dress up a couple of days later from the tailor, he again charged me $100 even though he clearly remembered the situation, and I had the receipt with Mr. Irvin's autograph on the back. Mr. Irvin even told my ex-husband and me that he had been using this tailor for many years, so of course the tailor knew him and would not have forgotten that Mr. Irvin paid for my dress. He refused to give me back my dress until I paid him the $100. I tried to get him to call Mr. Irvin to confirm that he did pay for this, but it would have been pointless because the man totally remembered the situation and already knew who Mr. Irvin was and that my dress was paid for by him. There was no way he forgot that this happened in his store in front of his face. Even though I should not have, I coughed up the other $100 just to get my dress back so I could catch my flight the next day. So in the end the tailor ended up making $200 off, making my dress a half of an inch shorter because he got paid twice, even though it should have only cost me $18. I have always hoped that one of these days I would run back into Mr. Irvin and be able to tell him what the tailor did to me, especially being that this was his regular tailor that he used all of the time. I would love for him to know the type of person that the tailor really is and that he rips off his customers. Anyway, going through the whole experience was totally worth it just to meet such a nice guy with a good heart trying to do good in the world. I'm still not a football fan, but I am a fan of Mr. Michael Irvin as a person now. If any of you ever run into him, I hope you remember the story and relay it back to him and he can find a new tailor that's not such a shitty person. I'm suing one of my parents. Growing up, I never had it easy, and my parents splitting up was like a hurricane ripping through the very foundation of my existence. But that was just the beginning of the shit show that was about to unfold. Let me introduce you to my father, a man so self-absorbed and manipulative that even Satan himself would tip his hat. He had always been distant, always more interested in his own vices than being a father to me. But what hurt the most was the way he played a chess game with my mind, exploiting my vulnerabilities for his own gain. You see, my old man was a con artist, a master of deception, and it was about time I unveiled his true colors. I had stumbled upon evidence that he had been forging legal documents, defrauding innocent people out of their hard-earned cash. The audacity. He thought he could get away with it, but not on my watch. Igniting a fire within me, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I was gonna sue that sorry excuse for a father. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find, meticulously documenting his web of deceit. It was like playing a game of cat and mouse, always one step ahead, waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike. My heart raced with adrenaline as I prepared to unleash the truth upon him, not only to seek justice for those he had harmed but also to finally put an end to his reign of terror. The day of reckoning finally arrived, the courtroom packed with tension. I stood tall, ready to unleash the storm that would expose his wicked ways. As the trial progressed, I laid out my evidence, each document a nail in the coffin of his deceit. The truth spilled out like venom, poisoning the air and leaving everyone stunned. The look on his face, that twisted mixture of anger and fear, was like the sweetest symphony to my ears. But just when I thought victory was within my grasp, darkness loomed over the horizon. In a shocking turn of events, my father's defense pulled out an ace card, a supposed expert witness who could single-handedly destroy my case. This so-called expert claimed that my evidence was fabricated, that I had manipulated the truth to suit my own agenda. The courtroom gasped in disbelief, their doubt casting a shadow over my fight for justice. My heart sank, but my determination surged even stronger. I would not let this charlatan get away with trying to tarnish the truth. I dove headfirst into the abyss of investigations, determined to unravel the mystery behind this alleged expert. It was a game of cat and mouse once again, but this time, I would make sure the mouse got caught in a trap of its own making. Days turned into nights as I dug deeper, leaving no stone unturned. Tangled within a web of fake identities and hidden connections, the truth slowly emerged. The so-called expert witness? A puppet dancing to my father's sick tune. My old man had orchestrated this entire facade to break my resolve, to pull me away from my quest for justice. In that moment, as the last puzzle piece fell into place, I realized the true depths of his manipulation. But this isn't where the story ends, my friends. Oh no, The tables were about to turn, and the storm was about to rain down upon him with a fury unmatched. I had the evidence I needed to prove his guilt, and I was ready to take him down. So, buckle up and stay tuned for the next chapter, where I will take my father to court and prove to the world that justice will be served. The truth may be ugly, my friends, but I'm ready to show the world the true face of evil. This battle is far from over, and I will stop at nothing to bring down the very person who should have been there to protect me. Stay tuned, because poop is about to hit the fan in ways you can't even imagine. The truth will prevail, and justice will be served. This is my story, and it's just getting started. Ida for giving away my dad and my sister's tickets to my graduation ceremony and telling them to not bother showing up. I, 18F, have my high school graduation ceremony this Wednesday. It was sent to my parents in an email that I will be giving a speech that day as my grades made me valedictorian of my school's class of 2024, and I was excited to do so. My school made us reserve and buy tickets to the ceremony weeks in advance, and I picked mine up on the 26th. The problem started at dinner when I told my family I picked up the tickets for my graduation day and would keep them with me until the day of just to make sure they don't get lost. My dad told me that he and my sister had plans for an hour before the ceremony, but that my mom would be there the whole time, and that they'd try to be there for the after party. I was honestly shocked for a moment, before starting to laugh, assuming they weren't serious. When I realized they actually weren't joking, I'll admit I was a bit mad. I'm usually a very shy and non-confrontational person, even around my family, but I started yelling at my dad and sister, asking if they were seriously ditching my graduation ceremony. I told them that the after party was useless to attend, and that all the pictures of the graduates with their families would be taken at least 2 hours before the ceremony. They said it's fine and we can take our own pictures the day after my graduation. My parents will disown me if I don't reconcile with my biological sister who accused me of rape. My biological sister and I have always hated each other. She was the golden child and was spoiled by my father. Our arguments would range from big issues, like her stealing money from me, to small petty things. These small petty things blew up because she wouldn't get her way. My father decided due to constant fighting one of us will be sent back to the USA to our mother. It was ultimately decided that my bio sister would be sent back to live with our mother, because she was closer with our mother than I was. While I stayed in Japan with my father, his new wife and my 3 stepsisters. A few months pass and I get brought into my father's room, where he was sitting with his new wife. They said the dreaded "we need to talk." My mother reached out to tell them that my bio sis had accused me of roping her. She felt it was important to contact them immediately as she didn't want my stepsisters to also fall victim to my rope mindset. My parents began interrogating me about the claims. The thing is, my father is a military man, so this was no easy interrogation. The interrogation included grounding me indefinitely, restricting my food intake to 2 meals a day, and him constantly trying to catch me out by asking me questions when I was sleep deprived. This went on for days. A week or so later, I saw my parents in tears as they proceeded to tell me they found out the truth. My biological sister, being the pathological liar she is, claimed while I was babysitting her I made her give me neck and then roped her. The reason for this lie was the fact that she was the one sent to the USA. I literally tried explaining she was the one who wanted to go, but my father told me that at the time she didn't know that she would also have to live with our aunt. My sister has always hated our aunt, and now resented me for staying in the USA even more than she did before. My father then told me that he will disown me if I don't apologize to her for wanting to send her to live in the USA, as they never want to be put through that again. I tried refuting, but my father basically said, "You know what your sister is like. She can't help but lie. Let her get her way and this type of stuff won't happen." What they were put through. What about what they put me through? The blame got shifted onto me in their words, "It never would have happened if you were nicer to your sister." Which basically was their way of saying all of this was my fault. Maybe I will rope her now, I'll get blamed anyway, so F it. You cost me $50,000. So. This is a little long. When my wife, 24, and I, 28, were starting out, we had a little old rental house downtown that we leased to male students. When we moved out of the county for a job, I figured it would be easier to rent to one family rather than chase around 6 separate broke students for rent, shared bedrooms. The first family that we put in there turned out to be a bad choice on my part. Misty, 40, was fine for the first 4 months or so. When I visited in person, the house was noticeably getting gross. They weren't taking care of things. This might have been somewhat forgivable, but then Misty stopped paying rent on time. To make matters worse, there was a plumbing issue that sounded expensive. The toilets were backing up and sewage was soaking the carpets in the basement. The whole place stank. I didn't even know why. The plumber ran a camera down the pipes to see what was happening. He informed me that the clog was a result of a buildup of needles. You know, the kind one might use for drugs. I opted to pay $1,000 to have them use high pressure to flush out the system. Unfortunately, my house was nearly 100 years old, so the high pressure destroyed the clay connector to the city's sewage system. The only way to fix it was to shut down a major residential road and dig it for $30,000. Insurance wasn't in any hurry to pay either. I didn't have that kind of cash sitting around at the moment, and Misty was still in there. I wanted to evict Misty, but it would be a long process, and I knew that she would fight tooth and nail to stay, as she didn't want to go back to her parents, who lived just down the street. By this point, my house resembled a hoarder's home, and I suspected that drugs were being dealt there. Rather than evicting Misty, I called the health department because they were living with no running water and a porta potty that they rented in the backyard. It was gross. They also had 2 girls there under the age of 10. It took a visit from a team of sheriffs to get her out, and only well after the property was condemned. When Misty finally did leave, she left about 100 pounds of rotting meat on the front lawn. She also left the house a giant mess and stole many of my things. I was so relieved that she was gone that I almost didn't care. She was a major source of stress in my life and in my marriage. It ended up taking several hundred hours and over $50,000 to fix up the house. Eventually, insurance came through for part of it. I tried not to be resentful about the situation because being a drug addict and living in a condemned building is its own hell. There wasn't anything that I could feel good about doing to her. She was already doomed to live poorly based on her own choices. By this point in life, I felt like I was above petty revenge. Besides, she had 2 kids. Oddly, Misty had the gal text me to ask for a character referral for a new place since she didn't have anyone else. Other than her parents presumably. I was dumbfounded but texted back a thumbs up. Maybe I could save the next guy. Eventually, I did get the call from the next guy asking about Misty. He was in a hole to me on the phone. He was talking over me and talking down to me. He was an expert landlord doing his due diligence, etc. I tried to get my story about Misty in, but then I paused. I listened to him talk down to me some more. I'm a total stranger, what the hell? And then I waited until it was my turn. I told him, Misty was great, I had some major plumbing issues, otherwise she'd still be with me. Also, she's got a cute family. Treat me with disrespect? Good luck with Misty. You two deserve each other. Misty got to the place and thanked me. Then I never heard from either of them again. Eddie me. Update 3, I'm abandoning a 39-year friendship. I cannot sleep. I just sent M an email. This email reads, Dear M, I'm sure you have noticed that I have been quieter than usual lately. I am not mad. I love you very much. If anything, I'm quite sad. I told you last fall that my mental health was in bad shape again, and that I had decided one of the things I needed to do was remove myself from Twitter and all political discussions in real life. This decision brought me immediate peace and has made me deeply contemplative. One thing I've realized is I have been far too dependent on you over the years for advice and have always sought your approval. That is not your fault, it's mine. If anything, it was an unfair burden to place on you. I have stopped believing in conspiracy stuff over the last 6 months or so. I find that whole way of thinking bizarre and deeply disturbing now, also prejudiced and classist. I'm an overweight, divorced, and remarried woman. All 3 are sins according to the Bible, but no one hates on me for any of it. I don't see why romantic orientation is a greater sin than anything else. My job as a Christian is to love and serve others without stopping to consider whether they are worthy of it. I know you are kind to your lesbian friend. This is what I see in the overall Twitter group I used to be part of. I leave it for God to judge, not me. I got my first dose in January and the second in February. I was tired of all the arguments about it and wanted to see for myself what would happen if I got it. If I dropped dead, so be it. I am not afraid of that. Absolutely nothing happened either time other than a sore arm for a few hours. No one coerced me, and in fact I didn't even discuss it with anyone before doing it. My husband remains undused. That is his choice, this is mine. This is something I should have told you a long time ago, but I get extremely embarrassed when you or your husband say political related stuff to strangers in public. Like Happy Tim Waltz sucks day. I think it's highly inappropriate and if I'm being honest, obnoxious, to try to engage people with your way of thinking who are just trying to enjoy a meal out or do their jobs. I also worry you're going to upset the wrong person someday and get assaulted. I worry about you because I don't find the obsession with Waltz and the Twitter group healthy. That is what I am sad about, and the fact I just find all of it so toxic I can't be around it. It almost seems like it has become an identity, and in my opinion is a cult. I think you are better than that and that you have been taken in by far out stories and unprovable lies. I trust neither side and don't identify with a political party. I will vote by issue when the time comes. Most of my family are liberals. I have no desire to hate them because of it. I was also deeply troubled by a response you sent me about my sister's long virus, saying how no test can isolate it and some other stuff. My sister has been through so much with it and I would have liked to have seen some compassion for her. I see her much more now and I see the effects on her mind and body. They are real and she's not crazy. I was an awful sister for judging her. My sister's symptoms are real and so are mine. We each had a triggering event, and possibly have a faulty genetic autoimmune response that did not allow us to recover from it. Hers are from the virus and mine are from a concussion. I need the space to figure out who I am and what I truly believe. This is very painful, and I imagine it's a shock to you. It's not something I can say without breaking down, and like I said above, I'm too embarrassed to go out in public together due to the comments made to strangers. One last thing, and I hope you feel the love and sadness I have and not that I'm attacking you. As a Christian, it offends me to see you post scripture at night and then bash on the liberals all day long. I feel that will turn more people away from God and not towards Him. Also praying over food in restaurants and then wishing someone a happy Tim Waltz sucks day. So, if I don't respond or want to get together, I wanted you to know why. We have had a heck of a friendship going back almost 40 years. It breaks my heart to say these things to you. It's just that I can no longer not say them. Please allow me space over the next several months as I finally come into my own. My parents abandoned me for drugs and are now messaging me on Facebook. Before I share my story, I want to provide some background. I was born to 2 drug-addicted parents, along with my older brother, Colton. We endured years of mental and physical abuse until our great-aunt and uncle stepped in and rescued us from that terrible situation. There was one horrifying incident where our parents left us alone in a hotel room for 2 days without any food or water. Our aunt had been trying to save us for years, calling the police and even attempting to retrieve us herself, but unfortunately, they didn't consider the harm we were enduring. Despite being severely underweight, dehydrated, covered in bruises, and neglected, the authorities didn't intervene. Finally, we were saved from that hell and went to live with our great aunt and uncle, who showed us more love than we had ever known. They provided us with a good home, although they lived in separate houses due to their divorce. We started seeing our mom, her new husband, and our baby sister when I was 8 years old. This continued until I turned 11. The last time I saw them, my mom had relapsed into substance addiction and became violent towards her husband, throwing vases at him and attempting to choke me. We then went to Brown's, where my mom used the phone to call my great uncle, who came to pick us up. My great uncle passed away last year due to alcoholism, and I miss him dearly. Now, let's get back to the story. I was cleaning my room when I received a text from my dad. Here's what it said: "Hello, this is a pleasant surprise. I've been wondering when I would find you again." He also sent a picture of himself. I am in church. I felt a surge of anger and disappointment. There was no apology or concern for how I was feeling. I chose not to respond because I am still deeply hurt by his actions. He abandoned us, and now, without my great uncle or stepdad, I no longer have a father figure. He chose substances over his children. And he is also a person I find physically unattractive, so I don't want anyone to associate me with him. About 30 minutes later, my mom also texted me. Here's the gist of what she said: "Hi baby girl, I was thinking about you. I won't blame you if you don't respond, I don't expect you to. I miss you so much, and I'm grateful that your aunt took you in when she didn't have to. I feel like I failed as a mother, but at least your aunt made up for it by giving you the love I should have." I scrolled up and realized that she had sent 3 long paragraphs before that message, which I had missed. Essentially, she was apologizing for being a bad mom, expressing how much she missed both me and Colton, and describing how beautiful she finds me. It made me cry. Before that one day when she relapsed, everything seemed perfect. She was kind to me, read scary stories, baked with me, and did things that my great aunt, due to her age and illness, couldn't do. But after that traumatic day, I'm not sure if I can let her back into my life again. So, my question is, how should I approach this? Should I reach out to them, and if so, how can I do it without my great aunt finding out? My homophobic brother said he didn't want my gayness around his kid. My brother doesn't want a useless FG around his kid. There is a 14-year age difference between my brother and I. I'm the oldest. I come from a relatively conservative group of people where we have the mentality of as long as we don't talk about life it's all good. My brother and his girlfriend are having a kid. For the most part everyone is happy. This is my mom's second grandchild, so she is extremely happy. This will be my first nephew. I have a niece from my sister. I'm not one of those people whose life revolves around their nieces or nephews. I deal with my own life as I need to. Don't get me wrong. I love my niece to death, but I just don't have much of a relationship with her. Not long after the announcement of my brother's kid was made, we were having family dinner and talking about the baby, of course, and who would be babysitting. My mom obviously, my sister was saying she owed my brother a lot of babysitting time from when her daughter was young. My mom said that most likely I would be able to babysit as well from time to time. My brother said that that wasn't necessary as he doesn't want some useless FG taking care of his kid. The room went quiet and I just kinda froze for a minute. To break the ice I cracked the joke of woohoo, I'm off the hook. Dinner was kinda quiet after that point. The baby shower is approaching and I got a call from my brother's girlfriend's mother saying she didn't RSVP and was wondering what I was bringing. I told her I wasn't coming and relayed the dinner conversation to her. She was kinda shocked but also asked if it was a joke taken out of context. I told her that even if it was, I wasn't laughing. I thanked her for the consideration, but told her I wouldn't be attending. This got back to my mom almost immediately and then to my brother and caused a huge fight. Here is the thing. This is what I grew up with. My brother has always been horrible to me even growing up. He tried to get me arrested by accusing me of child abuse, tried to blackmail me on more than one occasion, has called me some pretty horrible gay slurs. The list goes on. I think had I told his girlfriend's mom all this that she would see that it wasn't a joke. Just regular daily life. I laugh about it now. At some point or another they will need me to babysit. I won't be around or can say no. My homophobic brother said he didn't want my gayness around his kid. My brother and I don't have the best relationship. In general he is a JDFK who has made my life miserable. Him and his girlfriend are expecting their first kid and in conversation he made it clear that I will not be involved in his kid's life because he doesn't want a useless FG around his kid. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 3 years and the relationship has been a secret. My family has our own version of don't ask don't tell, so it has just never been known. And that's okay. Well, after some serious conversation we decided that he was going to move in with me. The lease on his apartment was up, I own my house. And all is good. Not long after he moved in my mom and sister stopped over. Apparently the silent treatment she was giving me was getting boring. Boyfriend was home when she showed up and the house looked crazy. You could tell that someone was moving in. Enter boyfriend. Me, mom, sister, this is boyfriend. He is moving in. It felt like a cartoon. Mouth was moving but no words were coming out. Finally. Don't you think it's pretty soon to be moving in? Me, not really. We've been together for almost 3 years. Big smile on my face. Boyfriend, nice to meet you. Excuse me while I move some things around. Mom. How could you keep this from us? Me, because we don't talk about my life. It has been stated that my job isn't a real job because I have a desk office job. And we certainly don't talk about my love life because of all your personal beliefs. But I listen to all of you. We have our own version of don't ask don't tell. That's how it's always been and how it always will be. Want something to drink? How's the treatment going? How's my niece doing? Same big smile on my face. Of course this gets back to my brother who is pissed off for some reason. This really has no effect on him. But it's just his way of making it known that I'm happy and he can't do anything about it. He sent me a message about the fact that I don't know how to take a joke and all the trouble I got him into. Apparently the girlfriend's mom was shocked about what was said. And asked if that was how he really felt. He didn't know how to answer. That was enough of an answer as far as I was concerned. And again it's back to radio silence with my family. It's been kinda nice.
I think my husband's mistress thinks he is richer than he actually is. My best friend thinks I am wrong for keeping silent. We have been together for 14 years. Living together for 11. He came and told me that he was in love about 3 weeks ago. I was surprised at the lack of care I had to give it receiving such information. I did love him, but maybe my love has always been conditional and its survival depends on it being reciprocated, because it literally vanished the second he confessed to me that he was in love with another woman. He didn't want a separation but to maybe open the relationship or let his feelings for her subside. I said it was over. It was like I never had feelings for him ever. He was taken aback by my indifference, which I thought, the audacity. Did he want me to be hurt and suffer? I told him that he should be relieved that he didn't cause pain. Instead, he has been sulking since. Last Friday I got home and the mistress was there, sitting in my kitchen sipping my tea. I felt nauseous because seriously? I told them that this wasn't civil at all and to never be in my home again or I would call the cops. I went to my room and I heard her yelling at him for not standing up for her. Then I heard her say something very curious. Why haven't you kicked her out yet? He was trying to tell her to lower her voice, whispering, later. We can discuss this later. She left and he came to me apologizing. He said, we didn't make love here if this is what you are scared of. She just dropped by because I was working from home today. I told him that he had until the end of March to move out and to find somewhere to be during the weekends. This morning I changed all the locks. From now on he isn't allowed in my place during my working hours, so if he starts later or finishes earlier, he needs to wait for me to come home and let him in. But his mistress's words stuck with me, so during the weekend I have been stalking her social media. I think she thinks that he is rich. Or at least that he owns my apartment. I think she also thinks that my parents' summer house and boat are his. Unfortunately the loser has taken her there, probably bragging about his wealth because her hashtags were all about the good life. I was telling my best friend all of this, but she was more agitated than indignant on my behalf. She told me that he was a scum not telling his mistress the truth. I agreed. I know, right? But then she said I was no better not explaining to her his situation either. I was dumbfounded, but she was serious. I told her that it wasn't my job to bring his mistress back to earth. My best friend got very angry and demanded that I gave her mistress's username so that she could warn her. No. I said. She called me a bigger bitch than he is then. I don't know what's going on with these people. Have they gone mad or have I? When did our moral compass go ask you like this? Can someone tell me that I am not insane? Update. I hate a showdown with my former best friend. I did it. I had a showdown with my former best friend via text and I confronted her about her non-existent support when I went to her with my woes. I told her that she concentrated on the wrong issue. She should have been my shoulder to cry on. She should have shown up with wine, ice cream and a shovel, but instead, she called me a bigger bitch than my husband. She tried to gaslight me and I realized that she's always been a good gaslighter, so I interrupted her before she made me out to be the villain. I asked her bluntly, was her husband's name married when you started sleeping together? You told us that he was married before. We all knew that, but we all were under the impression that he was married and divorced before you two met, but was he still married? Is that why you related to the mistress and felt sympathy for her? Because you were her? She didn't answer me until next day to call me a bitter and jealous bitch. Wow. This was the last one-on-one interaction with her, I have decided. She's been my friend since preschool, but now we need to go our separate ways, not only to save us from future hurt but also to save our memories together from hurt. I talked to my husband too and asked him not to make the separation difficult and bitter, that it ruins all the happiness we felt being together because we cannot think back on a third of our lives with resentment. I asked him to take my dad's offer. He offered to help him find a lease on an apartment and pay a half-year's rent if he moved out without giving me problems. When I got home, he and his clothes were gone. He left an apology letter saying that he will always love me and never meant to hurt me. So I have finally been able to cry my eyes out and it felt so good. I have been crying since I got home. I lost two of my closest people, but this is what happens when we hit hardships. We see people's true faces. This is my update. I don't know if anything major will happen to make more updates. It is time for me to move on.
What popular rumor in your school turned out to be true? That a 12-year-old 6th grader had gotten pregnant over summer break. Our Los Angeles County suburb, it was a small and far separated from LA itself. See how large that county actually is on Google if you are unaware, was so scandalized by this rumor that a newspaper article came out with a cartoon drawing of a pregnant girl in a pretty little girl dress and ribbon in her hair, playing with dolls and kneeling next to a dollhouse, accompanied the story about the little girl who got pregnant and planned to keep the baby. She was interviewed. I remember her name, but it's unnecessary. The whole damn town knew who it was. What's wild is that the kids in junior high actually had a baby shower for this 7th grader as she got close to full term, and all brought in packs of diapers and formula for her on a designated day. with the teachers, principal, and probably the school district in support of this. The year was 1984 to 1985.
My best friend slept with my little sister and I called him a creep. Hi TikTok, I'm honestly at a loss right now and need some outsider perspective. So my parents died in a car accident a few months ago and now my sister, Lily, 18, is staying with me at my apartment. I love having Lily here. I didn't get to see her as much after I moved to the city where we're currently living and my job. It was a much smoother transition than I expected. I reintroduced her to my best friend, Cole, 27, almost right away and they seemed to get along fairly well. My sister's birthday was in July and the night after it, she went to a new 18+ club that opened in our area. I didn't think much of it and just wanted her to be safe. After that night, Lily seemed more stressed and I assumed it was because of her first year at college coming up. She's taking online courses for the first year, and just tried to give her advice on how to handle it. Yesterday after Cole came over to drop off some brownies he had baked, my sister came up to me with tears in her eyes and admitted that she had bumped into Cole on the night after her birthday and they ended up sleeping together. I was shocked, but from how sad and ashamed Lily seemed, I asked if Cole had taken advantage of her. Lily said no and that it was 100% consensual, but Cole asked her to keep it a secret. Lily didn't want to stress me out and was afraid of me being mad at her, but she couldn't hold it in much longer. After reassuring Lily that I wasn't mad at her and that she was completely right for telling me, I went to my room and angrily called Cole. I yelled at him over the phone and told him how creepy it was that he effed my freshly 18-year-old sister and that he was way too old to be messing around with girls her age. We went back and forth for a bit before finally hanging up and I went back to talking to Lily about this. Cole told his family and our mutual friends what happened. During the night and even this morning, I've been bombarded with texts from them saying that I was an ass for calling Cole creepy and that since it was a consensual intimate encounter with Lily being of age shouldn't matter. I haven't shown Lily the texts, I don't want to make her feel worse than she already is. With how consistent everyone has been with calling me an asshole, I'm wondering if I really am. So, am I the villain for calling my best friend creepy for sleeping with my little sister? My best friend slept with my little sister and I called him a creep. To start us off, I ended up talking to Lily about what happened that night and she ended up revealing that shortly after I reintroduced Cole to her, he began texting her, saying he wanted to help her grieve. Lily had told Cole about her plan to go to that club and by the time Cole had shown up, she was decently tipsy. Lily had woken up in Cole's bed the next morning and after he had woken up too, he told my sister to lie about what happened by saying she was at a friend's house because I would consider it to be a betrayal of my trust if I knew they slept together. After further discussion, Lily and I decided that grief counseling was best for her. Lily said that she regretted not getting it at the start because to her, that's what started this. As for Cole's family and our friends, I decided to ask them what they were told by 2 separate group chats. I was effing right that he didn't tell them what actually happened. Both his family were under the impression that Cole and Lily had already told me what happened at first and that I seemed okay with it, but when Lily wanted to talk further, I blew up on him out of the blue. I told them what actually happened and while Cole's family seemed hesitant to believe me, they'd said that they would talk to Cole. As for our friends, they believed me and while some apologized, some were saying that it shouldn't have been an issue in the first place because my sister was legal, so I had to drop those people. I've blocked Cole and I haven't confronted him further, but I'm preparing myself for the worst when I do. Also, to clarify some things, I'm a woman first of all, and second for all, I don't think Cole had ever romantically liked me the past 15 years of us being friends. There just hasn't been any sign of that, but then again, this proves that I don't know him as well as I thought, so I don't know exactly.
My perfect Christian husband left me because I miscarried his child. My husband, or maybe now ex-husband, and I have been married for a year and have been together for 5, and we've never had a huge argument like this one. In high school I never had a relationship because I had to take care of my 4 younger siblings. I just never had a social life because of them. When I entered college, I was ready to put myself out there. I met new people and hung out with a regular group of friends. There, I met John. He was very handsome, tall, and nice. As I spent time with him, I started to like him because he was very attentive and a sweet talker. I had always grown up to ignore my feelings because I knew that my family was a lot more important. I was the eldest, and because my mother left us at a young age, our father occasionally drank excessively and was incapable of taking care of us. So, I never thought anything would happen with John. Until we were at a party and he got a bit intoxicated. He ended up confessing he had feelings for me. The next day, I had a talk with John and he told me he felt really embarrassed about confessing because he wasn't planning on telling me because he was scared of getting rejected. I told him I also had feelings for him, so he took me out to a restaurant for our first date and then started dating after that. Everything was going really well and we were already 3 months in. We generally talked a lot about each other's hobbies and plans after college. That's when the topic of kids came up. He was very expressive about wanting kids and having a big family because he was an only child. I laughed at him when he said this and tried to be dismissive in a joking way by saying, "Trust me, you don't want kids. I had 4 other siblings and it was hell." He looked so serious and it made me stop laughing. He then told me that it was a deal breaker for him. He needed to have kids and if I didn't want them, then I wasn't the right woman for him. At this point, I was madly in love with him and didn't want to break up. He had become my source of happiness and I would visit his dorm at least 4 times a week. So I kind of just laughed it off again. I didn't want to talk about this for a good while just until I sorted out my thoughts, but he kept bringing it up. We couldn't have a single conversation without him mentioning kids. Thing is, he was so excited to have kids but we never slept together. He told me he was waiting until marriage and I was fine with that because I knew he was the one and that I was going to marry him anyway. Because we weren't having intimacy, I forgot all about the baby talk and college was so busy that he never brought it up again. After college, we both went into pretty successful careers and we eventually got married. We were enjoying the honeymoon, but only a couple days into our trip he said that we should start thinking about kids and how we should start trying soon. I freaked out when he said that and remembered that I still didn't want kids. I kept making excuses not to sleep with him, like I was too tired from a day out or too intoxicated to sleep with him, and I wanted to remember our first time together. He was very understanding, but he said when we got back home, I no longer had any excuses. Safe to say, I was dreading the end of this trip. I never imagined my first time, but trying for a baby right at the start was not ideal in any way. I was very worried about what would happen when we went back home. Well, the time eventually came. We did the deed and he finished inside of me. We waited for the results and I was so scared. I remember silently crying in the bathroom hoping for the test to come back negative. And it did. For various months. I despised intimacy all the time because it wasn't about loving me or wanting to be intimate with me. It was about having kids. I was so unhappy with my life and I cried all the time now. One day, the pregnancy test came back positive and my heart stopped, but my husband was ecstatic. My whole world came crashing down. I started crying once again, but my husband mistook that for tears of joy. I quickly told him that I did not want this kid. My opinion from back in college had not changed and I couldn't see myself having this baby. We got into a really big fight over this. He yelled that I knew he wanted a big family and I couldn't deny him of that now because we had been together for years. He kept shouting that I knew it was a deal breaker and I messed up his life for him, because he spent all this time on our relationship. I felt really guilty about all of this, so I told him I would give him the baby he wanted. He calmed down after that, but I was so scared for my future. The first couple of months of pregnancy were absolute hell. I was experiencing every symptom known to mankind and I was feeling so awful. My husband even took time off work to help me as best as he could and would always support me. I would regularly get checkups for this pain because I could not deal with it, but during one of my checkups, the doctors told me that I had a cancer that required surgery to remove. My husband asked if this surgery would harm the baby in any way and the doctor said yes, it was unlikely I could ever have kids again. He left us alone to discuss this and my husband immediately said that I obviously needed to do this surgery, but there were other ways we could have kids. I honestly thought that would be the end of the kid talk and that we just live happily ever after as a child-free couple. But I was incredibly wrong because what happened next was crazy. I suggested we adopt a kid, but he said he wanted the kid to be from his bloodline, so he suggested getting another woman pregnant so she could have the baby and we could raise it. I asked if he was talking about surrogacy and he said, no. I want to impregnate the woman. But what happened next was even crazier.
What did someone slip up saying when they were drunk? I was not babysitting my wife after she got super drunk. My wife and I were on vacation in a foreign city. We met up with some friends, went out to dinner and then hit the bars, and I got fairly tipsy/borderline drunk. Out of nowhere, my wife decides it's time to go all out and informs me it's her turn to get drunk. Problem was, I'm already tipsy/drunk Lamau. Then she Jewett disappears. We sent a female from the group into the bathroom to find her. But no, my wife just vanished to the bar and proceeded to down 12 shots of Fireball whiskey and some flavored vodka. Yeah, you can imagine how that went down. She pukes all over the place, pukes again on the street, and drunk me is kinda all on my lonesome as our friends are all trashed too. Somehow, I managed to navigate both of us back to the hotel on foot. I get her into the shower to clean off the puke, she says she's okay, and I flop onto the bed and pass TF out immediately. All seems well, until 2 a.m. rolls around and the hotel phone starts blaring. As I'm groggily trying to figure out what's happening, I get out of bed and I realize my feet are literally wading in water on the carpet, 2 inches deep. She passed out in the shower, not a bathtub, shower only, and her butt perfectly blocked the drain in the floor. It ended up flooding our entire hotel room and leaking out into the hallway and into someone else's room, who presumably called the hotel staff. We managed to get ourselves dressed, hotel staff comes up to talk, and we're shuffled to a new room without a watery carpet. No real consequences and we're not charged any fees. But here's the crux of the issue, my wife turns around and blames me for the entire circus. Apparently, I should have been more attentive and made sure she got out of the shower? I guess I would get it if she didn't spring this on me after it was too late for me to not drink. So am I the a-hole? What secret could ruin your life? So, don't really know how to start this off, but I'm attracted to beds. It started somewhere during my early high school years, when I was really starting to discover myself. There was something about beds, the fact that when you go to sleep at night, you're always with them. Their purpose is to make you feel comfortable at night, when you're at your most vulnerable. Anyway, I modified my twin bed towards the end of high school, essentially tearing the fabric, shoving some pillows in the side, and make a little hole that I could insert myself into. I've always known that the behavior is odd, but I can't help myself. Nowadays, I live with my girlfriend. I don't have that twin bed anymore, but anytime we make love, it has to be on a bed. If it's not, I can't get hard. Needless to say, if this got out, it'd truly F me over.
I found out that my husband's affair partner has a boyfriend, and I told him that they're cheating, so when husband came back to our house, he had black eyes. I found out that my husband's affair partner has a boyfriend, and I told him that they're cheating, so when husband came back to our house, he had black eyes. I found out my husband of 14 years was having an affair with a coworker. I was utterly crushed. We had a good relationship, and I never suspected he was cheating on me. I looked the AP up, and she had a boyfriend of 2 years, so she was cheating on him the entire time. I felt it was right to tell her boyfriend that she was cheating on him with proof. I would have wanted to be told in the same situation. He asked if we could meet once so I could tell him what was going on. I met him, and he was lovely, ridiculously handsome, and funny. It solidified that cheating had nothing to do with a betrayed partner because I had been feeling insecure about it before. He also offered a revenge lay, and I declined. We agreed to confront our partners on the same day at roughly the same time. Afterward, I told my husband that I knew he was having an affair. He immediately begged for my forgiveness and said that he was sickened about what he had done. If I gave him another chance, he would spend the rest of my life making it up to me. He said he felt insecure about aging and no longer being the man he once was, to get some of that back and to show off his wealth and power. We talked about it for a long time. I told him that I told AP's boyfriend because, unlike some people, I don't believe in hiding things from your partner, and the blood drained out of his face. He said that the boyfriend was abusive, and I should have never told him. The AP contacted him to say that he had screamed at her for hours, and she was afraid and needed my husband to come over. I told him there was no way he was coming over to help AP. We could call the police. After all, he knows her address. He left anyway, saying that he loved me, but AP's blood was on my hands if I said anything. I called the police and told them I thought there was a disturbance at AP's place. My husband came back later, and he had black eyes. He claimed AP got violent with him. He maintained that he did the right thing. The police just told the two of them to leave before they both got arrested for fighting. He said that he couldn't believe I was so heartless because I had read the texts and knew her boyfriend was abusive. When I read the texts, all I saw were lies on lies focused on me because my husband would lie to his coworker about how the marriage was dead, that I cared more about appearance than him, and that I was using him for his money. None of which is true. I have a better job than him and a better financial position. I don't believe the AP's sob story. I refuse to apologize for telling the boyfriend. My husband called me vindictive. He's been telling his side of the family that I'm getting iced out until I tell my side of the story, which makes it more 50-50 about whether I did the right thing. Ada?
I yelled at a Down syndrome girl and made her cry. My reasoning was completely justified. I know I sound like the bad guy, but hear me out. I have a 14-year-old cousin with Down syndrome. She is overall a very nice girl, but she has one major issue that can't seem to be resolved. She coughs with her mouth wide open and coughs directly into people's faces, or if we are eating she will cough into your food. I see her pretty often as we are a close family and this becomes an issue just about every time. I've tried staying silent, but it's a serious problem. I've addressed this with my aunt and she just tells me to get over it because she doesn't know any better. She's also gone on to say it's not like you can catch that thing, if she coughs on you, that thing, in reference to her Down syndrome. Also, I've noticed that she is not even taking the effort to try and correct her. She just sits around and lets her do it, does not even say something as simple as let's remember to cover our mouth. I've told her she needs to get it under control but she refuses to acknowledge it, continuing to play the she can't help it card. The final straw for me was 2 days ago when we were visiting my other aunt who has a newborn. They gave my cousin the chance to hold the baby while sitting on the couch. She then coughed 2 huge coughs directly into the baby's face. I was terrified. I yelled, "Stop, you'll make the baby sick." My aunt told me to stop being so dramatic and let it go. My cousin then started crying. I responded with, "I'll let it go when you teach your daughter to cover her mouth when she coughs. It's not that hard. I understand that raising a child with Down syndrome is not easy. It's very difficult, I know. I just feel that this is something every child should be taught." My aunt flipped out and my cousin started crying hysterically. My aunt told me I should be ashamed of myself and they stormed out. Almost my entire family is calling me an a-hole, saying I was being so rude and ignorant. My grandma even said it was fine if she coughed in the baby's face because babies can't catch anything. I yelled at a Down syndrome girl and made her cry. My reasoning was completely justified. Sadly, I have a relatively scary update. Something I did not mention in that post was that the aunt with the baby was very silent the entire encounter. She was also very much pressured into letting my Down syndrome cousin hold her newborn baby. My grandma and my cousin's mom kept saying over and over to let my Down syndrome cousin hold him. She was overall reluctant and quiet, but they kept pushing. My cousin's mom even made a comment about her being ableist for not letting her hold him. She was submissive and caved in. Also, something I did not mention was that my Down syndrome cousin has a severe punching problem. She is very sweet, but when she gets upset she will start punching people. Her mom doesn't stop it because she insists she doesn't know any better and insists hitting will help her calm down. Well, yesterday my aunt with the baby called me sobbing, telling me that my cousin and aunt came over to see the baby and was pushed into letting the Down syndrome cousin hold the baby once again. My cousin got into a fit and started slapping the baby in the face hard. My aunt rushed over and took the baby away. She reprimanded both cousin and her mom. My cousin started crying and the cousin's mom asked how dare she yell at them and kept playing the she doesn't know any better card. I believe she should be teaching her that it's not okay to hurt a baby. My aunt kicked them out and she told me she took the baby to the ER. My cousin's mom sent my aunt a message going on about how ableist she was and she knew the risk of hitting by letting her hold him. Except you pressured her into IT? The next thing that happened was my grandma called my aunt with the baby and angrily yelled at my aunt on the phone. She threatened her saying she better not report my cousin for slapping the baby or there will be dire consequences. My grandma also continued to pull the "she doesn't know any better" card and insisted my aunt should just get used to the fact that my cousin hits people and it's going to happen. My aunt was furious but kept silent. I don't know what she ended up telling the ER happened, but he sustained no serious injuries. After they got back home, my cousin's mom called her saying she never should have taken him to the ER in the first place because it wasn't that big of a deal and that she was being dramatic. My aunt finally told me at the end of the phone call that she had decided to go no contact with them and apologized to me as that would mean leaving me behind. I told her it would not, because I've decided if these people think that my cousin should get away with assaulting babies because she has Down syndrome and refuse to help her or try to correct her behavior, then they're not worth being around. We're both going no contact now.
My disrespectful husband let his friend sit on his lap because there was no seat available. He's threatening to leave me after I left the party, so I did the honor and packed his things. My husband and I have been married for 3 years, and from the beginning he was very close with his best friend's sister Lola, 18. Well, my husband would often talk about her and tell me how he had seen her grow up throughout the years. Lola is always very bubbly and seems very fond of Ethan as well. I remember when we were dating she would ask to come along on our dates a lot. When we announced our engagement she asked my husband to better not forget her after being a married man and to still hang out with her. Soon we moved to a different state and kind of lost contact. Now Ethan's best friend came to stay with us for some time and Lola came along as well. The moment she saw us the first thing she said was how hot my husband has gotten and she was glad he didn't look like those boring married men. Then throughout their stay, Lola would just ignore my presence and would be way too close to Ethan. I told Ethan that it was looking a bit inappropriate and to ask Lola to tone it down, but he said that Lola is just a bit childish and is that way with everybody. Well, on their last day, we decided to host a dinner party for everybody. During the party, I was with Ethan when Lola came and told me, "Oh, I need to steal her husband for a while." And before I could say something she grabbed Ethan's hand and took him for playing games. I ignored it since it was their last day, but then throughout the dinner, she was getting way too close to Ethan and would just drag him away whenever I would be around while giggling at me. When everybody sat for dinner I sat beside Ethan and Lola came last. She then said, "Oh, there is no seat," and then just went and sat on my husband's lap. Everybody was surprised and Ethan said laughing, "Lola, stop acting like a kid, you are not a kid anymore." Lola started laughing saying it was a joke and got up and sat on the other seat while giggling at me. I was so angry with the disrespect, and with the fact that Ethan was so cool with it, but I didn't want to say anything bad so I excused myself, took my car, and went out. About 1 hour later Ethan called me asking where I was. I told him I was going to my friend's house and I would come after Lola had left. I know what I did was terrible, but I was so angry at that time that if I had stayed there any longer I would have probably started fighting or crying. I came the next day and Lola and her family had left. Ethan was very pissed and said I took things too far. I started crying and told him how everything made me feel. He said I was horrible to think such things about Lola and that she was like his sister. I told him that I was not doubting his intentions, but I was hurt by how disrespectful Lola's behavior was and he was enabling her by not saying anything. He got defensive saying that I sounded ridiculous and couldn't even take a joke. I said regardless, I don't want her in my house again. To top it off, Lola sent a message saying that she was sorry about making me so insecure in myself and that she would make sure to make me feel better, but I should not have left as it was pretty childish and kind of spoilt the mood. It felt so backhanded. Care just left me and I replied, "Don't flatter yourself, I will never be insecure about someone like you who has nothing but a birth certificate. I wouldn't have left if you knew what respect means. But, given this text, I think you should be put in kindergarten again." Then I blocked her. The next day, my husband and I were still not talking. I told him that he needed to maintain a distance from Lola. He asked if I was giving him an ultimatum. I asked, "Will you go as far as disregarding and disrespecting my feelings for Lola?" This rubbed my husband the wrong way and he said since I had such disgusting thoughts in my mind, and was giving him an ultimatum anyway, then he might as well leave because he could not live with such an insecure person who had such disgusting thoughts about him. He packed a bag and left. For his mother's place. Later Lola's brother texted me and called me a bunch of names to think like that about his sister, saying Ethan should just leave me and that a disgusting person like me deserves to be alone. Update: I learned that during the dinner there was Lola, her brother Sean and his girlfriend, and their cousin Derek with his boyfriend. So I called Derek and asked about the situation and what happened after I left. He was sympathetic and said that after I left at first they thought I would come back after some time, however things were awkward, but when I didn't come, Sean's girlfriend told Lola that she was so disrespectful for doing that. Derek and his boyfriend also said the same thing. Lola started crying saying they didn't have to corner her and attack her over a silly joke, that she didn't know it would get so out of hand. She then left the room while crying. Sean's girlfriend also texted me saying she was sorry for what happened. I told him how Sean's message was inappropriate, but she had no idea about the text, so I sent her a screenshot and asked her to tell Sean not to harass me again. She was very apologetic and said she would talk to him. Now my mother-in-law called and asked what was happening as Ethan didn't tell her and only said we argued. I eventually told her everything. She was furious at my husband. Now that I had a week to clear my mind without my husband, I realized how little respect he has for me and that he could not see why I was so mad. I realized that I could not be with a man like that. I packed all of the stuff that he left behind and put them outside the house. I also changed the lock. Last night, I woke up with him banging on the door and calling my name. I quickly got up and looked at the peephole. I asked him why he was there. He asked, "What do you mean? I live here. Why is my stuff outside?" I quoted his last statement to me that he doesn't want to be with an insecure woman like me and he should go now because he is not welcome here anymore. He went from angry to pleading, saying that he does understand now and let him for us to talk. But I did not. I went upstairs and went back to sleep. Thankfully, my neighbors did not complain about the noise.
What's something your child has done that you're going to talk about forever? When I brought our new baby girl home from the hospital, my 3.5-year-old daughter was none too pleased at all the attention the baby was receiving. So I made a huge effort to pay a great deal of attention to her as well. Visitors were coming to see the baby, and I was sure to include my toddler in every conversation, as I didn't want her to feel displaced. I honestly thought I was doing a stellar job of this, as I made certain to tell my older daughter how much I loved her, appreciated how sweet she was to the baby, how helpful to the family, and what a great big sister she was turning out to be. Things went beautifully for the first 3 days, and I was so proud of how my new family was falling together, or at least I thought. Then my 3.5-year-old toddler came to me with a very serious expression on her little face. Toddler, when does the baby leave? Me, she doesn't leave. She is ours and we get to keep her. Toddler, oh no we don't. She has been here 3 days and that's enough. Me, she is ours and she stays here. You are a wonderful big sister and you'll come to love each other and be great friends as she gets older. She gave me a disgusted look and marched into the next room, slamming herself down on the couch. About 5 minutes later she came back. Toddler, so you want a baby, right? Me, yes, I want this baby and you will love her too, I promise. Toddler, I know you want a baby, yes, but, did you notice they gave you one without teeth? Me, I laughed so hard that the baby started crying and my toddler stalked off again. Eventually, she decided the baby could stay, since the toothless argument wasn't working. Crisis averted. Today I effed up by showing my adult films to a class of 200 people. I'm studying accounting in school. I fell in love with the subject my freshman year after taking an intro class. Now in my second level of accounting, I resolved to dominate the class by participating in lectures, interacting with the professor and so on. On Wednesday for homework, we had to essentially draw a diagram of the relationship between manufacturers, merchandising stores, and how their financial statements differed. We were told to have our drawings ready on Friday so we could add to them in class. I did this on my iPad using the Notes app. Friday comes along. Around 30 minutes prior to class, I'm in my apartment feeling a little horny, so I open the browser on my iPad and go to Rule 34 to find some art I remembered looking at a few days prior. After I'm done, I switch to the Notes app on my tablet, put it in my bag and head to class. In class, I sit in the front row. The professor asks if anyone has completed the diagram assignment. I raise my hand. She then asks if she could use someone's diagram as an example to explain to the class. Assured that I drew mine perfectly, I proudly offered my iPad to the professor, who put it under the camera that displays to the entire auditorium. A few minutes in, as she's explaining balance sheets, she swipes her finger across the screen near the bottom to point to something in my diagram. Unfortunately, this switches apps back to the browser, and my Rule 34 art is put on full display to the class. The professor freezes and is silent, so is the class. My heart drops and the professor looks over at me and says, how do I go back? I quickly grab my bag, jump up, grab my iPad from the lectern and walk quickly out of the auditorium. On my way out I hear some murmurs and isolated laughter. All the way back to my apartment my heart is pounding and honestly I almost cried. I couldn't sleep all night and I never want to go to class again.
Stepdaughter's entitled boyfriend lands them homeless, carless, and adrift. I call my stepdaughter's entitled boyfriend Wreck-It Ralph, no relation to the trademark cartoon, just coincidental naming. He has a tendency to break/ruin/tear up everything he touches. My stepdaughter, who is actually a sweet and endearing young woman whom I love dearly, has, like many young women with self-esteem issues, allowed herself to be led astray by Veer. In the year they've been together, she's lost everything, but at 23 she is old enough to learn her lessons without us parents coming to her rescue until she gets rid of Veer and back on track. When they first got together, they lived with her dad and myself for a few months. It very quickly became apparent Veer had a chip on his shoulder when it came to me. He would carry tales to my husband, causing us to argue, despite my husband telling Veer many times that was my house and everything and it was mine. Veer would keep asking my husband, not me, if he could have this or that, and that's if he asked. He kept getting more and more animals despite our telling him no more. Neither were taking care of the ones they had. They weren't buying dog or cat food or cat litter, my husband and I were. They weren't picking up the messes, and they weren't training them, allowing them to tear up our belongings. Mary Jane is legal in our state, and there is a dispensary in our town, and the only work these two would do is door delivery, her job with a daily payout, just to get enough money for Veer to make a purchase at the dispensary every day along with eating at fast food restaurant. Veer's chip on his shoulder when it came to me was such that they brought my husband a soda one night, walking in the back door right past me, calling out loudly, "We got you your favorite soft drink," to my husband in the living room with zero inclusion to me. Another example is my stepdaughter asking if she could use my debit card to go get the four of us drinks at a local convenience store one hot day. My husband and I were unloading stuff from the truck and trailer in the backyard, which was no problem. However, when checking my account they spent $20 on food for Veer without asking. The end came when I told them they had to replace the bedroom door their dog chewed the bottom out of, and refused to allow the pit bull mix they wanted to rescue even though it had a bite history to enter my home. They moved to my stepdaughter's mother's home at that point. During their time there, my stepdaughter kept getting tickets in her car, which is only registered to my husband. They weren't paying their insurance, which I had bought my stepdaughter her own policy and paid the startup out of my money when they lived with us, and didn't pay the plate renewal. Now her license is suspended, and it cost my husband and I $600 to get the plates, again in his name only, unsuspended. Plus they had damaged the car and it needed repairs. So he took it from them. Before her license was suspended, but after the police took the plates from her car, my husband let her use his truck, which was on my insurance policy. Veer drove it, and he has no license, and blew the motor in it. It is now sitting and can't be used. I told my husband I would put the car on my insurance for him, but only if he drove it. If he returned it to them, I was canceling the insurance, which I've stood by. Nevertheless, Veer called daily demanding my husband return the car to them once it was legal and fixed. After 3 weeks my husband finally said, "Look, you dumbass, I don't know what it is that you think you're trying to accomplish here, but you're not demanding anything from me and you're not getting the car back. I may have originally bought it for her before she got with you, but it is my car in my name and I'm keeping it in lieu of the truck you ruined. Don't call me again about the car. Got it?" We had been hearing of ongoing disputes between my husband's ex and Veer. Things got so bad there that Veer told my husband's ex-wife to pack her shit and get the F out of her own home. Another time he told her to shut the F up and remember who she's talking to. So we all decided it was time to let our daughter hit rock bottom, since she wasn't seeing how Veer had taken her from being a sweet, lovable, well-liked and responsible girl in a college nursing program to this person with a criminal history and no prospects at the moment. My husband's ex-wife moved in with her boyfriend, turning the power off at the home she had been renting, and told her former landlord, whom she was actually longtime friends with, she wouldn't allow it to affect their friendship if he evicted them for squatting, since neither were on her lease to begin with. When my stepdaughter called wanting to come back, my husband told her she could but Veer could not. Now they are staying at a homeless shelter in the town where Veer's mom lives, and Veer's mom won't let them live with her either. We hate to see her go through this, but this entitled Veer she won't let go of has really brought her down, and she can do so much better. This guy actually told us once he couldn't work at a factory that he interviewed at because it was climate controlled and his heart condition won't allow that, then argued with me and my husband that climate controlled meant controlled by the climate, so it was hot in summer and cold in winter. We haven't seen him hold a job or do anything useful and productive since they've been together, just demand from and use the people who love the girl he's become a Klingon to.
Redditors who have cut family members off from their lives, what was the final straw for you? My father is a dope addict and a narcissist. My whole childhood had him rarely playing a significant role, and when I did see him, he had every excuse as to why. As I got a little older, I started to second-guess the context of earlier events and hear him repeat self-serving lies to people that I knew weren't true. Then he started getting incarcerated. His disappearing for a weekend or even a week at a time was one thing, but his spending weeks or months in rehab or prison was a whole different thing. My mother finally kicked him to the curb, and any of the times I bothered to be around him after that, my mother never discouraged a relationship with him or said a bad word about him. Despite having more than enough reason to, he always tried to act more like a friend than a parent. One of the last times he got arrested and went to prison was for a period of months. I didn't talk to him for a stretch, and then when I did again, I told him that if he ever touched another dope, then we were done. He would no longer be my father or have any place in my life. Fast forward a few years and I was just laid off from a job I really enjoyed. I had just walked into my apartment and was basically in tears, knowing I had to tell my roommate that I lost my job and had no idea where my rent was going to come from in 10 days. Then I get a phone call from my sister to say that the asshat had gotten arrested and was going away for 7 years. He had let me down my whole life. He had made his addiction everyone else's fault. He badmouthed his friends, his family, my mother, her family, and everybody. He missed every memorable and important event from my childhood. He never paid a cent of child support, so I grew up poor with a single mother trying to pay for herself and 3 kids. He even, at least, once took some of my stuff and sold it, presumably for dope money. I had overlooked, or at least accepted, all of that. But that news and that gut punch of disappointment on what was already a very bad day were just too much. I told her I didn't care and to let him know not to contact me when he got out. Unfortunately, he did eventually get out. I sincerely hoped he would just die in prison so he could stop hurting and disappointing my siblings, and has since gotten all kinds of people to feel sorry for him through a mix of his annoyingly effective charisma and also an abundance of lies, but I've held firm in not saying a word to him. He's tried sending me letters and everyone was tossed in a bonfire unopened. He's tried having relatives pass me messages from him, but I informed them quickly that anyone acting as his mouthpiece will get cut from my life as well. And honestly, it feels great. People always say dumb crap like, but he's still your father. You only get one, or you should forgive him for your own sake, but that's all horse crap. The thing I did for my sake was remove the toxic person. It was 100% the right move, and my only regret is that I didn't do it much sooner and save some of the extra heartaches. And yeah, you do only get one father. You also only get one gallbladder. And if it starts to become toxic and dangerous to your health, they cut the crap out of your body so you can continue living a healthy and happy life. My wife wants JFK to kiss her kitty. My wife is obsessed with JFK, yes, John F. Kennedy, 35th President of the United States. He's her #1 crush. She's in her 30s. She is obsessed with the entire Kennedy family. I probably know more information about the Kennedy family than I do about my own family, just from hearing her talk about them all the time and overhearing her watch and rewatch every Kennedy-related documentary and movie that's ever been produced. Seriously, she's seen every single one. and is always moping about how she's seen every Kennedy-related thing ever made and she wishes there was something she hasn't seen yet. If I accidentally mention that I haven't seen a particular Kennedy film or documentary, she's like, great. We're turning it on now. Then she gives her own commentary over top of the whole thing. The top man in her life is JFK. She has a framed picture of him on her vanity in our bedroom, so he watches us all the time. He's her phone background too. No pictures of me anywhere. She even talks to the picture sometimes. We have a framed picture of the Kennedy family on our mantle. Yes, the mantle in our living room that everyone sees. But it was a gift from her sister, so it must be displayed. Last year for Christmas she asked for these Kennedy-related Christmas ornaments. I did buy her the one she really wanted. Towards the end of Christmas I could tell she was getting a bit sad that I apparently hadn't listened to her heavy hints and bought her this ornament. Her Christmas was thankfully saved when I produced the ornament at the end of the night. Over half of her presents from everyone were Kennedy-related. She openly tells me, in detail, about her intimate fantasies involving JFK. He's the main person she fantasizes and about. If she doesn't seem very into having intimacy with me, her actual husband, all I have to do is put on my JFK voice on, I have perfected it, and she'll usually cave. I did have to put my foot down when she started talking about doing me with a back brace on. Too bizarre, I'm just not into role-playing like that. Why would I marry her when her heart clearly belongs to a man who has been dead for 60 years? This didn't all come out in full color right away. When she did start mentioning her crush on him, it wasn't concerning. Whatever, he was a stylish guy, had great hair, it wasn't the craziest thing I'd ever heard. She told me tonight that her list of favorite men is JFK Jr., a very close second to his father in her books, and she's taken up a bunch of hobbies inspired by him, thankfully not flying planes, yet, and Bobby Kennedy, Sr., thankfully she does not care for Jr. at all. Then me. I'm fourth behind 3 dead men. Her toys are all named after those guys. Her dog is named Jackie O. Now she's planning out a Kennedy tribute baby name. Her engagement ring just had to be from the same jeweler as Jackie Kennedy's ring. Done. I did that for her and I still can't rise above Bobby Kennedy to be number 3 at the very least? If she buys me one more thing that is something that JFK wore, I don't know what I'll do. Well, I'll probably wear it or use it because it makes her happy. My wife is relatively normal in most other ways. She's attractive, has a good career, although I know she slipped about her Kennedy obsession at work in a few moments of weakness and I'm scared to know just how detailed she got. She's told me she's touched herself secretly at work a few times and will just sit and stare at pictures of these men. Sure, she loves every salacious intimate detail that comes out about JFK, and has to tell me about it, which seems to be the only thing that ever gets her excited, and the more dirty details she finds out, the more affairs she finds out about, the more she wants to do him. But if I just look in the direction of another woman all hell rains down. It's fine. I'm fine. I don't know why I'm sharing this with the internet right now. It's so ridiculous. She's in the shower. Fantasizing about him right now. She told me that's what she was going to do. She says I should just be glad all my competition is dead.
My shameless mother-in-law always tries to snoop around the house. So I set up a glitter trap to catch her, and she went mad when she got covered with it. For some weird reason, my mother-in-law wants to go into our bedroom whenever she comes over. On one occasion I followed her as she went upstairs, and she walked past the bathroom on the main floor and up the stairs behind it. She didn't hear me, and I caught her walking straight into my room and rifling through bills on my dresser. She denied snooping, even though I just watched her do it, and said she would just use our bathroom because she couldn't find the other ones. She walked right past the one on the main floor and another one in the upstairs hallway to go into our bedroom. Since that happened, I installed an exterior doorknob that requires a key on our bedroom door and one on the door to our office and spare bedroom. However, she's still always forgetting where the bathroom is and trying the bedroom and office door. This ticks me off. My husband says that I just get annoyed at this because everything she does drives me crazy, and since we've put locks on the rooms we don't want her in, there isn't really a problem anymore. Well, over the holidays we had my in-laws over for dinner, and before they came, I was searching for the bedroom keys. We hadn't used them in a while since we only lock the doors when mother-in-law comes over. My husband told me we didn't need to lock the doors since she wouldn't try to get into the rooms, and I insisted that she would because she loves to snoop. We went back and forth and decided to cover the doorknobs in superfine glitter to see if she tried them. I did this once before when my husband didn't believe me about the snooping to prove she'd been in the rooms. Last time, she ignored the glitter, and we didn't say anything about it, but then my husband couldn't deny that she'd tried to snoop. So this time, I covered the knobs in glitter and for the office went a touch further and rigged a little folder of glitter over the door to the office before the in-laws came over. I left one side unlocked, and it was set so that if you walked into the room, you would get covered in glitter. My husband went out of his way to show his mom the main floor bathroom when they got here and specifically asked his parents and sister not to go upstairs. There's a baby gate, so the kids can't get upstairs either. Well, guess who had to go to the bathroom and got covered in glitter and had it all over their hands and hair? She completely lost it and started screaming at me, so I yelled back, and now my husband is saying I went too far and I'm the asshole, but sister-in-law says I didn't do anything wrong, and mother-in-law deserved it for snooping. Apparently, her car is ruined now too, because it's covered in glitter that she can't get cleaned up. So am I the a-hole?
Men in relationships, when did the ugly best friend try and get in the way? My fiancé's plus-sized friend cheated on the only man that would look at her. Now, it's ruining my engagement. I need to get this off my chest, I feel like I'm going insane. My fiancée Sarah and I have known each other for about 6 years, and we just recently got engaged last year. Our wedding is scheduled to take place in just 2 months, and I just witnessed something that is making me feel like I'm making a huge mistake. A month ago, Sarah and I were taking a rare opportunity to relax at home. She was in the kitchen making dinner while I was out back working on one of my projects. I came back into the house to get a drink, and saw Sarah talking on speakerphone. I could tell by her voice that it was her beluga friend Jessica. Jessica was an idiot, and had a disgusting attitude towards practically everything. She hadn't graduated high school, yet wanted to be with a 6'4" jacked male making $200K a year. Ridiculous, I know. When I first walked in, I didn't quite know what they were talking about, but then something caught my ear. I heard Jessica say that she was planning to leave her boyfriend, and that she had been cheating on him for over a year. I was appalled, and disgusted. Her boyfriend was one of the only men that gave her the time of day, and yet she cheated on him. Sarah, on the other hand, was super supportive. I remember a distinct "Yas queen, you go girl slay" coming from her mouth. It made me want to puke. It's hard to believe that she was acting like that when she makes Nick Avocado look skinny. Here's the worst part. Jessica was asking Sarah if she would help cover for her, since her boyfriend was coming home in an hour, and Sarah agreed. I was shocked. If she was willing to cover up for her friend's affair, what's stopping her from covering up her own affair? After a couple days, I haven't spoken to her about what I overheard. I don't think she knows I heard her conversation, but I guarantee she would have the same opinion even if I confronted her. I don't know what she sees in Jessica, besides her high blood pressure. I just feel overwhelmed. 2 weeks ago, I confronted Sarah. I told her that I thought what she was doing was totally immoral, and completely disgusting. She got really mad, and told me it was none of my business, saying that I shouldn't have been eavesdropping in the first place. Around this time, Jessica happened to be coming over to our house to visit, presumably to scheme her way out of trouble. She arrived in the middle of our fight and immediately took Sarah's side. She kept going on about how her boyfriend never made her happy, and that he was a useless male who didn't deserve anything in life. Was this ogre really serious? I got really mad that she was talking about this nice guy like this, and I flipped. He's a useless man? You didn't even graduate high school. You live off your parents' money, and you don't have a job or an education. You haven't studied a single day in your life, and the only thing you've ever memorized is the McDonald's menu. Both Jessica and my girlfriend stood there speechless, and I left. I took the car and went for a long drive. Sarah started blowing up my phone saying that I was totally out of line, and that we were through. I told her that was fine, and that I had planned on breaking up with her anyways. I didn't really care at this point, I just wanted them to stop barking at me. Later that day, I tracked down Jessica's boyfriend's phone number through social media, and sent him a message. I told him everything that had happened, how Jessica had been cheating on him, and I sent screenshots of Sarah and I's messages as proof to him. He sent me a message back saying he figured something was up, since she hadn't asked him for Burger King money in a while. He figured she must have had someone else paying for her food now. I let him know that Sarah and I had also broken up, and he apologized, thinking it was his fault. I told him it wasn't and that I had planned on breaking up with her as soon as I overheard their conversation. I still talk to Jessica's ex, and we've become good friends. I haven't heard much from Sarah, but her parents did send me messages asking why I had called off the wedding. I told them what happened, and they apologized for getting upset. I got some compensation for the wedding from them, and we still talk from time to time. As for Honey Boo Boo, the man she cheated on her boyfriend with left her after she spent $2,000 on Uber Eats in a single night with his card. He took her to small claims court, and got the money back while also landing her fat butt with a theft charge. She spent 3 nights in the county prison, and now she's unable to get a job. I haven't felt this giddy in years. On the same date every year my ex and I meet up to go camping, and every time it ends up with the best sex of my life. The date is coming up. Very long. Some years ago I decided to go alone on a beautiful 2-day hike a few hours away from where I lived. I decided to do it because I wanted to challenge myself, as I hadn't really done much on my own at that age and highly dependent on other people. If you're familiar with the route and in good shape you can complete it in 1 day, but due to me getting lost and stopping to enjoy the scenery I had to set up camp twice. A couple of years later I met a girl that I fell in love with instantly. I hadn't been with anyone before, so to me she was extra special, and within 6 months of meeting each other we moved in together. After being together for a little over a year and a half I took her to the same trail that I hiked alone years earlier, and we had an amazing time. We didn't rush it, but because I knew the route we finished late on the second day. The year after and on the same date we walked the trail again. Due to some bad weather we had to set up camp twice. Even though that year wasn't as good as the first, we enjoyed it a lot. Third year of being together things wasn't as good as the previous years. I could feel something was wrong in our relationship, but it being my first relationship I didn't know it had run its course. In an attempt to bring back the spark I suggested we should do the trip a third time and she agreed. We had a good time, but it just wasn't the same. A little bit after this I ended the relationship because I could tell she wasn't happy. Or I thought she wasn't happy. The next few months absolutely sucked for me. I decided to go no contact because talking to her would be too hard. I still loved her very much. I struggled a lot for about 8 months. I quit my job, I moved back in with my parents, and I isolated myself completely. I quit doing anything that reminded myself of her. We used to watch TV shows together, play games on my Nintendo, we cooked together and had our favorite recipes. I stopped doing all of this. I couldn't even go back to dating. Even flirting with girls felt wrong. I was absolutely miserable, so in an attempt to get my shit back together, I thought it'd be a good idea to reintroduce myself to the things we did and make them my own. I cooked our favorite meal, I watched the last season of Game of Thrones, and I invited a friend over to play Mario Kart. It was depressing at first, but after a bit I managed to enjoy doing it without her. Thinking I was getting over her, I figured I should go on our hike once again alone, just like I did the first time. It was the ultimate symbolic nail in the coffin of our relationship. My plan was to start dating again after this trip, and I knew exactly who I was going to ask out. The day came for the trip, and I was getting ready. I was excited, but a little bit depressed as well. I felt butterflies in my stomach and a little bit nauseous. I was shaking more and more the closer I got to the parking site. I arrived late in the day as my sleep schedule had been rather out of sync for a very long time. Once I got my gear out of the car, I debated not doing the trip at all. It didn't feel right somehow. After thinking about it for some time, I decided to do it. I had to do it. I didn't enjoy it at first, but it was a beautiful day, so I came to enjoy it after the first hour or so. I was getting hungry, so I looked for a spot to camp for the night. After eating and thinking for a little bit, I decided to walk a little longer. I remembered the first camping spot my ex and I used, and it was only a 25-minute walk or so. Once I got there, I spotted another tent in the exact same spot as we were in the first time. I tried to look around for a person, but there I couldn't see or hear anyone. I set up my tent not too far away, but not too close either, so they wouldn't feel creeped out. I sat outside with a fire enjoying the dusk. It was getting dark when I heard the neighbor talking on the phone. It was a girl and her voice was so recognizable I freezed up for about a minute. I tried to listen to what she said, but I couldn't make it out. I was 90% sure it was her, but it had been a long time. She didn't talk after that, so I guess she fell asleep. I, on the other hand, could not sleep at all. I was still using the same tent my ex and I used when we went together. I hoped she would recognize it in the morning, but to make sure I left my sweater outside that I'd had for years. When I woke up the next morning, I had hardly slept at all. My entire body screamed for me to look outside and see if the neighbor tent was still there. When I finally did, I saw that it wasn't. I got out, ready to eat my breakfast, and then I saw her. It was really her. She waved at me, and after a few seconds I waved back. She came over towards me and said hello. I asked her why she was there, and she told me she enjoyed the hike so much she wanted to do it again. I asked her if she was with anyone, and she said no, it was just her. I remember thinking it was a little odd, as she'd always been a little scared at night when we were together. I couldn't imagine her ever going alone. I was also very shocked to even see her again. I can barely remember what happened just after that, but I remember eating my breakfast and sharing some of my cookies with her. She showed me her new tattoo and told me she was planning to get more. I never took her for a tattoo person. She had changed so much, but she still had the same personality. For the rest of the way we walked together, we talked and we laughed. Eventually we made it to the second camping spot and we set up our tents. We got ready to eat and compared our foods. I brought MRE spaghetti and she had stale crisp bread, not exactly sure what it's called in English, and liver pate. She looked a little disappointed, so I asked her if we could switch because my stomach hurt a little bit and I didn't feel like eating spaghetti. She didn't accept at first, but after some convincing she happily accepted my offer. It was getting late, so we decided to head to bed. I was crazy tired after walking all day, so I fell asleep almost immediately. Sometimes during the night I woke up and heard her coming into my tent. She told me she was hearing some scary sounds. I told her I couldn't hear anything. She mumbled something for a bit and then asked me if she could sleep in my tent with me. I was half asleep but somehow managed to move my stuff around enough to make room for her. She brought her sleeping bag and got inside. I was just about to fall asleep when I heard her taking her clothes off, and suddenly I was wide awake. She never enjoyed sleeping with her clothes on, so I knew she was naked. She also made sure to leave her bra between our sleeping bags so I could get a good look on it. It took some discipline to fall back asleep, but eventually I managed to do it. When I woke up the following morning, she was still sleeping and I was spooning her. I had set up my tent with a little bit of an incline, so sometimes during the night she must have inched closer and closer to me. After so many months of not being with someone, lying this close her and knowing she was naked in her sleeping bag made me extremely horny. I almost came right there in the sleeping bag. I decided to go out and rub one out in the woods, but the action of getting out of my sleeping bag woke her up. I told her I was going out to pee, but I don't think I hid my boner well enough. I got out and realized I really had to pee, so I stood by the trees for a few minutes waiting for it to calm down enough to let the water out. It was close to impossible, but eventually I managed to do it. Having been out there for a good few minutes, I heard her yelling at me asking what was taking so long. I just said I really had to pee. She told me to come back, but I knew I wouldn't be able to walk all day this horny. She yelled again, so I went back inside. She was still in her sleeping bag, still mostly naked, but she had put on a thin, but still see-through sweater. She sat up straight and zipped down her sleeping bag and gave me a good long look at her boobs. I swear I almost passed out from blood loss. I couldn't hold myself back, so I kissed her. She kissed me back, and within seconds we were both naked on her sleeping bag having sex. We had sex twice, and to this day it's some of the best sex of my life. For the rest of the trip we were back to our old selves, exactly how we were before the relationship took a bad turn. It felt amazing, and I don't think I've ever been happier. When the trip ended we hung around for a bit, but eventually got back in our cars and drove off. When I got home I unblocked her on Facebook and looked through her profile. Sadly, I noticed a guy she had introduced me to at the end of our relationship in some of her pictures. I asked my friend and he said they got together a few weeks after we ended it. I'm not sure if she cheated on me or if she just acted weird because she developed feelings for the guy, but I fell back into the same depression I developed after our breakup. It didn't last as long, but it took much more for me to get out of it. I also learned from our mutual friend that he was the reason she got into tattoos and that they only dated a few months and that she was the one that ended it. I wanted to contact her, but after some time and rational consideration I decided not to. After some time I met a new girl. She was amazing and I enjoyed her company a lot. I realized that I didn't love her, but I clinged on to her to not be alone I think. We dated for a few months, but I couldn't get serious with her. I believe she was in love with me so I couldn't bring myself to end it. My yearly hiking trip date was coming up. I debated going, but I knew I wouldn't be able to keep myself from going just in case my ex did. I packed my stuff and left for the hike. I got there early and waited in my car to see if she showed up. I sat in my car for 2 hours just waiting when I finally saw a car arriving. Sure enough it was her, but the car was new. I waved at her and she smiled and waved back. We caught up and I told her I had a girlfriend. She looked a little disappointed but she was happy for me. She did ask if I minded us sharing a tent so she didn't have to carry hers, and stupidly enough I agreed. We started the hike and we had a good time. It was not the same as the previous year. It got a little awkward at times, but it was fun. The first night was tough. She once again got naked in her sleeping bag and I was horny as hell. My girlfriend and I did not have good sex. It was boring and I prioritized masturbating over having sex with her most of the times. That night I got out to masturbate 2 times and I was still horny when trying to fall asleep. The next morning she woke me up saying she was ready to eat. When I finally managed to open my eyes and look at her, she unzipped her sleeping bag showing me her fully naked body. We kissed and touched each other for a little bit but I broke it off before anything really happened. I had no idea where that strength came from, but I didn't want to cheat on my current girlfriend. We ate breakfast and after a quick bathroom break away from each other, I masturbated, set off for the last part of the trail. Things got weird and we decided to walk the rest of the way over camping another night. We got to the end and said our goodbyes and immediately I regretted finishing the hike so early. I stopped her from leaving and invited her to talk for a bit. We sat on a bench and talked. I told her I wasn't happy with my girlfriend and she helped me a good bit. I realized I had to break up with her. By the end we kissed and touched each other some more. I fingered her for some time and she blew me. She ended it there and we went our separate ways. First thing I did after coming home was to break up with my girlfriend. She cried for a bit, but took it surprisingly well. I talked a little bit with my ex after that, but nothing really came out of it. I was so into her, almost obsessed. After some time I blocked her again. She didn't really return my messages so I left it at that. Eventually I had mostly forgotten about her. I had some random hookups but nothing that really lasted. The date was getting closer and I started thinking about her again. If I went would she be there? I was happy and sad. I wasn't in love with her anymore, or not like I used to at least. My feelings for her was confusing. The date was coming up and I made sure to take the Friday off from work in good time, but the day before they called me and said I had to come in. I decided not to go on the hike, even though I was all packed and ready. When the morning came I got up and ready for work. In the shower I suddenly felt really sad and depressed. I called work and told them I couldn't come in. They said it was fine and that the guy who called off was coming anyway. I hurried up and packed my camping gear into my car and drove towards the hiking trail faster than I've driven before in my life. I was super excited to get there, and scared she wouldn't be there at the same time. I had no idea if she'd be there or not. I hadn't asked around what she was up to or looked at her Facebook at all. That made it even more exciting and scary. Only stop I made along the way was to buy the most optimistic condoms and lube I've ever bought. Eventually after some delays I made it to the trail parking spot. I drove around looking with my pulse going crazy. It was taking forever even though the parking spot is really small. I spotted a familiar car and sure enough, there she was. She was glowing and smiling wider than I've ever seen her before. She looked so happy. I got out and gave her a hug. It felt so good to just stand there and hug her. We hugged for probably 5 minutes, but it felt like it's only been 10 seconds. I could not get enough of her. We set off once again, with only one tent. I had brought a comfy inflatable mattress, pillows and blankets this time so she didn't even bring her sleeping bag. We didn't get far, not even the usual camping spot before we were all over each other. What was the moment you realized that you shouldn't have showed up to a date? Oh, I have one. I was 18. A girl sent me a PM on MSN saying she got my details from my mate and wanted to go on a date with me. I asked my mate and he said she was hot, so after talking a bit I agreed to a date. I had seen a photo and she was attractive. I turned up to the cafe for the date and was approached by some girl I'd never seen with a baby. She then told me she was the girl, looked nothing like her photo. She explained she thought I'd never go for someone who looked like her. She was right. Then she left her baby with me while she went to the toilet quickly. Alarm bells started to ring after 15 minutes. I asked a waitress to check on her. To my surprise the waitress came back and said no one was in there. I looked around the cafe and she was gone. I hadn't noticed her leaving. I didn't have any of her contact details and smartphones were not a thing so I didn't have internet access. I phoned my mate and got him to attempt to contact her on MSN. After telling him what happened he was surprised and had no idea. Apparently he also thought her pictures were the real her. Another 20 minutes went and I was scared so I asked the waitress for help. Thankfully she was able to help and called the police. They showed up and I explained what happened. I didn't know anything about this girl so I couldn't really help them. They said if she contacted me to get her to contact them. I left and walked towards my car. I went past another cafe about 6 shops down and there she was with a different guy. I went back to the police and got them to take her baby in while I watched through the window outside and waved when she looked up. Turns out I was the babysitter for her real date. My family wouldn't let me attend my siblings' weddings, so now I'm cutting contact with them. They will finally have the picture-perfect family they've always imagined. I think it would be easy to mention that I was never the family's favorite. I know there's a stereotype that the youngest sibling gets the most affection from the parents. Maybe it only applies to my family, but that's a complete lie. And I also know why my family treats me like that. They make no secret of it. I wasn't a wanted child for the simple reason that my parents only wanted a boy and a girl. So 2 children and no more. The fact that I was then born as a second son didn't fit into their family's predetermined future. For this reason, I was always ignored at birthdays. I wasn't even allowed to be in family photos because they wanted to give the impression that their picture book family was the way they had imagined it. They never let go of this image. And just as an aside, compared to my siblings, my parents punished me much more severely for little things. My sister once stole money and was grounded for a week, while I was beaten up for leaving my room at night. I put up with it over the years because even though my parents didn't really pay attention to me, I always had a good relationship with my siblings. When my eldest brother got married a few years ago, I was still a minor, and even though I was offended, I wasn't allowed to attend the wedding on the grounds that it would be a child-free wedding. I was 15 at the time, and no doubt there would have been no reason not to let me attend. Even though I was hurt that I was the only one not allowed to attend, I accepted it. I'm now 19 and my sister wants to get married. She gave birth to a daughter last fall and she and her partner wanted to get married. I was really looking forward to the wedding and bought myself a nice suit. At some point, however, I received a message from my sister that I couldn't come to the wedding because they also wanted to have a child-free wedding and they needed someone to look after their daughter, my niece. I knew that wasn't true as they had a babysitter. This said babysitter was a friend of hers who wanted to earn some extra money while she studied. When I pointed this out to her, she explained that the babysitter didn't have time because she had to study, which was also a lie, by the way, as I had previously sent the babysitter a friend request on Facebook and she even wrote a post on the day of the wedding saying that she was enjoying her day off. I asked her if she had anyone else who could look after the child as I really wanted to be there after missing my brother's wedding. Suddenly she got angry and told me I was being selfish and if I was a good brother I would say yes without argument, and if I didn't say yes, I wouldn't be allowed to come to the wedding under any circumstances. It felt like a punch in the stomach. I couldn't understand why she didn't want me at the wedding. In the end I agreed, but still contacted my parents again. They also told me not to be so selfish, as the day wasn't about me and my sister was deciding the guest list anyway. Then I also realized for the first time that my attendance was never planned from the beginning because I was the only one who didn't get an invitation. Yesterday was the wedding and I cried when I saw all the photos posted in the WhatsApp family group chat. Everyone had a great time. Even when my sister dropped her daughter off at my place and I wanted to give her my wedding present, she didn't even give me a glance. She didn't even say, "Thank you, here for the present nor for babysitting." I want out of this family. I love them but I can't stand being treated like this any longer. I'm about to be promoted at my home office job and when that happens I'm going to move far away and break off contact. They'll have the image of their perfect family back that I ruined and I'll have my peace. A win-win situation for both sides I guess. My mother got pounded by another man, and I hate my dad. My parents have been divorced for 3 years now. My mother cheated on my dad with a family friend. My father was devastated when he found out. He decided to divorce my mom, even though she begged him for forgiveness. He didn't hold back, he said terrible things to her. Not only that, but he told everyone, including family, friends, and me, what a cheating my mother was. He posted messages of my mother and her lover, now boyfriend, online. He publicly shamed her, and it was a humiliation not only for her, but for our family as well. I am torn between them and it is horrible. While I am angry at my mom for cheating on my dad and breaking and betraying our family, I still love her. She has been a great mom for my whole life, even after the divorce. She never badmouthed my father, even when he was at his worst. But my dad makes everything worse. It has been terrible. I can't stand my week with him. He is full of hatred towards my mom and says the worst things about her in front of me. He calls her awful names and tries to turn me against her. All this makes me resent him more and more. He is hurt, I get it, but this is not helping anyone, including me. I feel not loved by him, but used as a pawn in his revenge game, and I can't take it anymore. I want to hate my mom. I see posts here on Reddit of children cutting contact and hating their cheating parents so easily, saying cheaters are the worst, the scum of earth, etc. but I can't. I love her and I don't want her out of my life. I feel that makes me weak and naive, I don't know. I feel awful. I told my father to stop, to get over it. I tried to talk to him, I begged him to find a therapist, but he didn't listen to me. I didn't want to be around him anymore, and the hatred he was spewing. It is toxic, and I hate it, and I am beginning to hate him as well. I'm sick of so much hatred. Last week I told him if he did not stop the unhealthy obsession and hatred, I would cut contact with him as soon as I turned 18. I can't anymore. I just can't. He called me names and kicked me out of the house, telling me I could go and stay with my mother. He said I made my choice, and I am another traitor. He blocked me everywhere. My grandmother later called me and told me to be understanding. He was in pain, to give him time, etc. My mother told me to do what I thought was the best for me. I don't know. Just thinking I won't be around him ever again is a huge relief. Make my life difficult for nearly a decade, I'll make you look like an idiot. When I first left home to go to university, my parents co-signed a mortgage for me on an apartment-style condominium in a small Canadian city. This was 20 years ago, so it came in at a whopping $52,000. They thought that this was a much better and economical choice than trying to find an apartment and deal with landlords. I loved the idea and moved into my new home. The building was almost entirely populated by the 65-plus crowd. It was small and only had 24 units split into 2 halves. I had a basement condo. It was a nice place, nothing fancy, but amazing for a student. I was young, 19, but I was quiet, kept to myself and didn't do the whole party thing. I got along with most of my neighbors. I'd help them out moving heavy things or carrying groceries upstairs. I was acutely aware of the age gap and the general image of a university student, so I made sure to be just an all-around great guy to avoid conflict. The one person I could never see eye to eye with was my upstairs neighbor. For a 70-year-old woman that couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds, she walked like a damned elephant. She'd have gospel music on her TV at max volume at 5 a.m. on Sundays. She'd make remarks about that damn kid whenever something was left out of place. She even went so far as to accusing me of breaking into her car and making a police statement saying she saw me do it. Unfortunately for her, I was out of the country on an internship at the time, but still she persisted being a pain in my butt. I tried to approach her about the TV issue, and her response was to make sure that it was no longer just Sunday. After a couple of years of attempted diplomacy, it was clear that nothing I did would make things better. Others in the building probably knew she had it out for me, but why would this adorable little old lady try to lie and get me thrown out of the building by the condo board? She tried at least 11 times while I lived there. 7 years into my time living there, I was at my job with an ambulance service just north of the city. I got called to a shooting. Guy shot his neighbor in a land dispute. The neighbor survived, but there was of course going to be a police investigation. The investigating officers called me to get a statement and offered to just come over to do it, rather than have me travel. One of them was a constable I'd worked with quite a bit, so I said sure. We set a time for about an hour after I'd get home from work. I was just getting out of the shower when they buzzed to get into the building. I said come in, I'll be out in a second. I hit the door buzzer and quickly grabbed some pants and a shirt. I heard them come in, and then walk upstairs. As I'm trying to throw on clothes, I hear them knock on my upstairs neighbor's door. They introduced themselves as being from RCMP Major Crimes Division and that they were looking for me. Balls. She says, "Oh, he lives downstairs, what do you want with him?" They thanked her and informed her that they couldn't say, as it was an active investigation. My heart sank. But then I had a thought. It only took about 15 minutes to do my statement and they went on their way. And then the fun began. I knew the rumor mill would be starting. She would tell everyone that would listen that Major Crimes was looking for me and that I must be some sort of criminal. I decided to see where this went. Pretty soon I'm getting side-eye in the hallway, neighbors are steering clear of me, so I know she's been talking. Turns out I've been arrested for robbery and kidnapping and must be out on bail according to her. I found this out when one of my neighbors who was on the condo board showed up with a letter demanding an explanation and threats to have me kicked out. I asked him what this was all about, and he said, "Well, Linda sent us a letter about what had happened and we had to have an emergency board meeting because people don't feel safe with you here." I said that per the bylaws of the condo board, before any action could be taken, I could request a meeting to review and provide a defense. Linda was on the board, so I know she'd be there. They set a date for a week from then, but I was given a caution that it didn't look good for me and that I would have to do a lot of explaining. The meeting day comes. Linda is sitting smugly looking at me, the other board members are giving me dirty looks. The board president asks what I have to say in my defense. I stand and quietly distribute a letter on RCMP letterhead, signed by the regional superintendent that says, "Mr. Zenmedic is not under suspicion of any crimes, past or current, and has not been arrested, detained or questioned as a suspect in any criminal matter. His duties as a paramedic will often require him to make statements in regards to ongoing investigations, and in this instance on date, investigators had gone to obtain a statement about an ongoing investigation for which he was professionally involved. At no time did the members discuss, disclose or in any way indicate that he had any involvement in any wrongdoings. I am deeply saddened by the necessity of this letter and we will be reopening an investigation into a previous incident regarding false statements made against him." You could tell when people read and understood it. The dirty looks shifted from me to Linda. She exclaimed that it must be a forgery. She witnessed me being led off in handcuffs. She pleaded that they should believe her. It didn't help her. I stood and addressed the board and outlined the years of abuse and harassment, including the false accusation of break and enter to a vehicle. I informed the board that on advice of my lawyer that I do not discuss the matter further with any member of the board, as Linda being part of it, and using her position for the purposes of harassment opened the board as a whole to litigation and I was still weighing my options. The next day I had a knock on my door. The board president had informed me that Linda was removed from the board and that she was given warning about her conduct and that any further harassment could result in proceedings to have her removed from the building. She also had a visit from police with a summons for providing a false statement and obstructing a peace officer. She had to attend court. She pled guilty to both and was given a suspended sentence and 1-year condition not to harass, threaten or intentionally inconvenience me in any way. If she abided her conditions, she would receive an absolute discharge, meaning it would be removed from her record, like it never happened. I moved to another province before her year was up, but for a brief period of time, I actually got to sleep in on Sunday mornings.
I woke up to my boyfriend snoring and now I can't stop smiling. I've been with my boyfriend for over a year now, nearly 2. Usually when I'm cuddling with him I fall asleep because his presence is so comforting that I can't help it. After a while I would wake up to him playing with my hair or quietly looking at his phone. Today was the first time I woke up to him snoring. He never naps with me despite how tired he claims to be. I guess he finally gave in today and napped with me. When I woke up I was overjoyed as we had both fallen asleep together and I couldn't stop smiling. I just pressed my head against his chest and listened to him softly snore while I smiled like an idiot. I woke him up after a while and he got all flustered. He doesn't know I woke up quite a while before him as I think he'd really get embarrassed, but that moment will be something I'll cherish and maybe one day admit to him.
What is something that instantly killed the crush you had on someone? I saw him at a family reunion. Not only did I see him at it, he got intoxicated and tried hitting on a different cousin. I met who I thought was a sweet girl in college. One day we were walking around campus and talking. We talked about pets. She told me that she had a purebred English sheepdog, that she had killed on purpose because the voices in her head told her that the dog was plotting to steal her family away from her. My ex one time wanted me to hang out in the bathroom while he was showering, so he could tell me about his day. After a few minutes the most god-awful smell to ever grace my nostrils appeared and I started coughing. In between trying to breathe and trying to ask what happened, he interrupted me and laughed saying, "Sorry babe, I couldn't wait any longer," and he showed me that he took a dump in the shower. I was pretty grossed out, but accidents happen I guess. Then he started smashing it with his foot so it would go down the drain. "Oh, don't worry babe, I do this all the time," he said with a smile. He was broad-shouldered, and had wavy dark blonde hair, and a cleft chin. He sat in front of me in Biology 101, and about halfway through the semester he said, "Hi, I died inside." His voice was melodious and deep. I knew he meant, "I love you." He wore thick whale corduroy pants and a nice button-down Oxford shirt, and had a worn leather backpack. He was very handsome. In that 3-credit class I put on my tightest Guess jeans, waited until he was there, then sat down behind him and said hi. He would smile, and say hello. I died every time. I told my roommates about him. Summer came, and we all went home. I was in my local bar with my friends and, there he was. I couldn't believe it. "Hey," I said, "how are you?" He looked up from his beer. "Wow, hi," he said. We chit-chat for a little bit. It was the early 1980s. In a rural area. "Hey, can you do me a favor?" "Sure." "Can you act like my girlfriend?" What? Was this a ploy to get me to be his actual girlfriend? Could my dream boyfriend be true? He put his arm around the guy next to him. "Yep, he likes boys." Later that night they went home. Next time I saw him he thanked me for helping him out and now they are dating.
My brother showed up intoxicated to my mother's funeral and vomited into the casket. I have always been forgiving to my siblings, but I never thought that my own brother would be capable of doing something that has literally traumatized our entire family and anyone else who happened to be at our mom's funeral. I am the oldest of 5 kids. We had a hectic household growing up, but our mom was an amazing, strong woman who did everything she could to give us all a good childhood, and to raise us into respectable adults. We're all grown up now. My youngest sibling's name is Mark. He's 21 years old. Out of all of us, he is the biggest mess and honestly such a disappointment to our family. None of us are perfect, but we all care for each other and would never hurt each other. So I never thought my little brother could cause us pain like this, and I don't know how we could ever forgive him after yesterday. Even before he turned 21, my brother struggled with substance abuse, some drugs but mostly alcohol. He slowly started turning up to family functions more and more messed up, and would totally ruin a happy atmosphere by being incredibly intoxicated to the point of falling over and being unable to speak. At one family party, he fell face first onto the dining room table and cracked his head open. We had to call an ambulance for him and it really ruined the entire night. My mom had been getting older and I could tell it was hard for her to know that she was at the end of her life, and her youngest still hadn't gotten his poop together. She passed away from multiple medical issues last week, and we held her funeral yesterday. It was a total disaster and I can't stop crying when I think about what happened. My siblings and I were up at the front of the funeral home, speaking with all the guests as they came up to view her casket. It was so sad and depressing. We were all grieving and my youngest brother was nowhere to be found. To our surprise, he ended up appearing as one of the last people in line to come up and greet us. I went in to give him a hug, and immediately smelt the alcohol on him. He stumbled into my arms and began crying heavily. My heart ached for my brother, but of course, me and my siblings were pissed that he had chosen to show up completely plastered to his own mother's funeral. I thought it couldn't get any worse, but I was so wrong. After my brother collapsed into my arms, me and my other brother tried our best to stand him up on his own 2 feet so he could greet the rest of the guests with us. As soon as we propped him up and took our arms out from under him, he fell straight forward towards our mom's coffin and held himself up directly over it, facing my mom. He let out a loud, pained wail and before any of us could stop him, he vomited all over our deceased mother's face. It was the most chaotic, unsettling scene you could ever imagine would take place at a funeral. The guests started screaming and crying. Half of my siblings started beating the poop out of my brother while the other half were trying to clean my mom off while having panic attacks. We threw him out on the sidewalk of the funeral home after that. He was just crying and trying to apologize, all while lying down on the sidewalk bleeding since he was too wasted to stand up on his own. I wish I could scrub the entire day from my mind. I'm going to reach out to my brother next week, but for now, I don't think I have the stomach to even look at him.
I found out my girlfriend is homeless. Yesterday morning, I went out for a walk around the city and noticed a girl that looked familiar standing in a line at a homeless shelter. I took a double glance and saw a hoodie that was mine and then recognized my girlfriend, Kat. I was pretty shocked by seeing her there, but didn't approach her because I didn't want to embarrass her or anything. So for background info, I met Kat in February at a Dunkin's. I started making small talk with her when I saw we were both wearing the same Dodgers hat. I offered to pay for her drink after shooting the shit for a minute in line and got to know her when she asked if I wanted to sit down with her. As we were finishing up our drink, I asked her out on a date and she accepted. As the last couple of months went by, things were going great with us. I learned that she was working 2 jobs, wanted to go to college, was a devout Catholic. She invited me to attend Mass. I'm not Catholic, but went out of respect, yet I noticed that she never brought up her family except when she mentioned her dad who was a Marine that passed away when she was a kid. Fast forward to the present, and I ended up sending a good morning text inside the Dunkin's as I was looking to see if it was really her. Like clockwork, She pulled out her phone and told me that she was at her apartment and that she was cooking breakfast. It was really surprising for me because I always dropped her off at a nice apartment building whenever a date was over, but I guess she did that to give off the appearance that she wasn't homeless? Now, I want to talk to Kat about her situation. She's kind of a social introvert, to put it lightly. If she truly is homeless, I want to offer Kat to stay at my place. The only problem is that I don't want to come off like she owes me or anything like that. I also want to respect her Catholic faith because she told me that she wants to wait to give up her virginity after I originally invited her over to my place before I knew she was homeless. The Catholics aren't fond of unmarried cohabitation either. Thoughts on how I can navigate this? I forgot to mention that Kat has an older sedan. I know that I'm making a lot of assumptions, but I'm guessing that she lives inside her car because she doesn't carry a backpack around her all the time and she wears a nice dress and flats when she goes to mass. The other clothing she wears is sorta just casual. Think your typical Converse, skinny jeans, and overcoat. Nothing too fancy or too dingy. I saw videos of my fiancée cheating during her bachelorette party. My girlfriend and I were together 4 years and we were engaged to be married. Last weekend she had her bachelorette party. I didn't have a problem with it, especially after what she told me was the plan. Her and some friends were going to rent an Airbnb or something. A big place with like 4 bedrooms, and they were just going to get trashed and party and hang out. The day of the party she was at my place, a 2-bedroom apartment, 1 room I use as a home office. I am a self-employed investor. She makes all of the arrangements and goes to meet her friends. We texted a little, but as the party warmed up we stopped and I figured they were just having fun. After midnight I start getting ready for bed and notice that the computer in my office isn't turned off. Rather, the black screen was just a screensaver. It turns out my fiancée had not logged out and her messenger was still open on the computer. There was a group chat where her and the girls had been planning everything, and a lot of videos were uploaded to the chat. I was a little curious and I started watching some of the videos. Most of them were pretty innocent. Just a group of 15 girls getting drunk and stoned and dancing and whatever. Then there was a video of a woman going to the front door and about 10 guys enter the apartment. I don't know who they were and I didn't recognize anyone. There were a couple videos of the guys and girls dancing and drinking, and then the worst happened. A video started of my fiancée making out with a guy on the sofa. She stops and rolls over and starts making out with a second guy. Then there was a video of her and the 2 guys going into a bedroom. There was also a video of them coming out that according to the timestamps was 5 minutes later, but that doesn't mean anything. For all I know the videos were an hour apart and they were all just uploaded at the same time. Seeing all this was like a sledgehammer to the guy. I walked into the bathroom because I thought I would be sick. I wasn't, but I feel like I paced back and forth in the apartment for about 30 minutes. Then I poured myself a rocks glass full of whiskey and chugged it down. I saved the videos and then made one of my own. Just a short little selfie video of me saying, "Hi, this is my name, your ex-fiancé. Just wanted to say I saw the videos from the party and the wedding is off. I hope it was worth it." I'm glad I saved the videos because in less than 10 minutes they were all deleted and my phone started blowing up, but I didn't answer any calls or texts. At first it was just my girlfriend texting saying she can explain and it's not what it looked like. Then her friends joined in, but I ignored everyone and didn't respond. Then suddenly I got a request for a video chat and I'll admit my curiosity got the better of me. I answered the call but didn't say anything. It was my fiancée sitting in front of the camera and she looked like she had been crying and the other friends just around her. I really only know maybe 4 of the friends, but I recognize a lot of the others. First she started apologizing but kept saying it wasn't what it looked like, it was just a party and the guys coming over was not planned or anything like that. She said it might have looked bad but nothing happened. When I didn't say anything she just kept going on with more of the same and her friends backed her up. The more I didn't speak the more hysterical she got. Eventually she admitted to kissing the 2 guys but dumped the blame on her friends who all took responsibility for that, which surprised me a little. She said the kisses didn't mean anything and that's all that happened. Then she seemed to remember the video of her going into the bedroom and she started screaming that it was just a joke and nothing happened. All the other women confirmed it was just a joke and that my fiancé had walked into the room and then turned around and walked out again. This just keeping going on and they just kept repeating themselves. Eventually everyone got quiet and all I said was, "Is there anything else to add?" She said no and I just ended the video call. I went onto social media and changed my relationship status to single and posted that the wedding was off and if anyone had bought a present they should feel free to return it. Fiancé saw the post and is freaking out even more and just keeps insisting that all she did was kiss and nothing else. I sent her a text saying if I suspect that her or any of her friends lie about what happened or try to make me the bad guy then I will post all the videos online. Right now no one else knows what is happening. This was a couple days ago and everything for the wedding is cancelled and my fiancé just keeps pursuing me. Update: everything has been called off and cancelled. The wedding is officially not happening. I got the ring back and all of her stuff is moved out. She is staying with her parents for now. We did talk a little bit. It was mostly just her begging and apologizing and crying. She keeps insisting that all she did was kiss the guys, and she has never done anything like this before and she promises it will never happen again. Part of me really wanted to believe her, but the problem is that this incident puts our entire relationship in doubt. I think she may be telling the truth, but again the point is there is no way to know. If it is true that her friends pressured her to do it, then how can I believe they never did it before? We kept going around in circles because ultimately there is just no way I can be sure. She said she would do anything including cutting off her friends and only ever drink around me. She really blasted her friends online saying if at the party had stuck to the original plan she would still be getting married, so maybe she already cut them off. All I can say is that at the moment I am single and I'm just going to live my life, probably take some time to myself after getting out of a 4-year relationship. What's crazy is that a couple of her friends are also texting me, just to talk. I haven't responded yet because well it's hard to trust them too. Thanks again to everyone who expressed sympathy and I hope none of you here need to deal with anything like this in the future. Have you ever seen an employee get fired on the spot because of you? Many years ago I took my 2 children on vacation in Florida. It was their first vacation. My kids were 6 and 8. We stopped in a restaurant that was very much like the Ryan's restaurants. It was buffet or an entree. I ordered an entree and I believe my kids got an entrees as well. Our waiter was super nice, and while we were waiting on our meals my daughter, the youngest, asked if she could look at the dessert bar. She just wanted to see what the options were for after dinner. We went up to the dessert bar and she eyed the choices. She said she wanted a cookie for later and I said, okay, which one? My daughter said those are chocolate chip cookies or raisins. She pointed at them. The bakery employee came up and before I could ask which one was the chocolate chip cookie, she slapped my daughter's hand. She angrily informed me that she needed tongs to get the cookie. I was shocked by what just happened. I told the lady we only had a question and we were not ready for dessert. She scowled at me. I gave her a death stare and we went back to the table. Our food came out but I didn't eat any. The waiter came back and asked if everything was okay. I said to him no it wasn't and I told him what the bakery employee did. He gasped and got his manager. I relayed the story to the manager and he was very apologetic about it and said he would handle rude employees. A few minutes later I saw a rude employee going up front. She gathered her purse and walked out the door. The manager came back and refunded our meals and said we could choose anything else on the menu to take home. He said the bakery lady no longer works for them. We chose some entrees and went back to the bakery bar. Another lady was there and she was very pleasant. I asked her about the cookie and she pointed to the chocolate chip one. My daughter picked up the tongs to get her cookie as she already knew how to do this. The bakery lady then put out signs identifying what the cookies were. Apparently the other lady had forgotten to do this. Our waiter took great care of us and the refund I about $20 received from our meal I gave it to him as a tip.
I was pressured into a threesome by my boyfriend and enjoyed it but not because of him. So I, 21F, have been with my boyfriend, 22 male. For 3 years he's known I was bi since we started dating and had never really said anything about it till last year. After he met my college friend Maya is also bi and very beautiful but while honest about her experience isn't one to brag. When in a group playing drinking games last year Maya opened up about a threesome she had before and I guess that's when my boyfriend got the idea. I had been against it when he first brought it up but eventually he wore me down. When I finally said yes he immediately suggested Maya, which looking back was his aim from the start. When we approached Maya she was down and we had made plans that worked for everyone's schedule. Maya texted me separately multiple times to make sure I was on board and comfortable as she put it just didn't seem my style. I told her I was on board and to not worry that I and my boyfriend had talked about it. When the day came she surprisingly took the lead which I don't think my boyfriend was expecting either. I'll spare you the details but she made sure the focus was me and actually instructed my boyfriend on what to do. If he tried to focus on her she gently redirected him to me. Saying things like "New, look how pretty your girlfriend is when you do this." She barely let him touch her without asking me, "Do you want to do?" She would praise me a lot though out something I didn't even realize I liked. She also checked on both of us through the whole thing. I honestly think it was the best time me and my boyfriend ever had. The craziest part is when she did her solo session with me and I had never felt anything as good as that. After it was over she did what she called aftercare and made us comfortable. I don't remember me or boyfriend falling asleep. But when we woke up breakfast was made. Maya is a chef professionally so it was amazing she had also left us a notice she had work in the afternoon and was sorry she couldn't stay. I feel like the dynamic between me and my boyfriend had changed since and I know we have to talk about it but I don't even know what to say. My point being I enjoyed intimacy with Maya more than I ever had with my boyfriend. I didn't want to go super into detail, but Maya was mostly touching me and was focused on me. I also think my boyfriend is disappointed he wasn't the focus. I also think he was surprised how much he liked being told what to do. My boyfriend beat me to it and has texted me, "We need to talk, we are planning on meeting up at Starbucks after my shift tomorrow." When we met he apologized. He said he never saw himself convincing me as manipulation as we had talked about being more adventurous in the bedroom before and he thought I just needed time. He told me he did enjoy it a lot but it wasn't what he imagined it would be and was feeling insecure because I had been so responsive to Maya. It wasn't until after it was over he started feeling inadequate as a partner. I'll admit I was a little heated because I told him for the past year something like this would happen and that 3 ways, especially ones not talked about in depth and hard boundaries set, this happens. I was willing to work through this if he was willing to work on his insecurity, but then he asked me to drop Maya. I absolutely refused. Maya is one of the few friends I have in the city and we're very close even before all this. I explained to him that distancing from Maya would not fix his insecurities. We went back and forth for a while before he tried to give me a "it's me or her" speech. I just left him there. I'm hurt and angry with myself it even got to this point. Like, how in the HLL did I get here? And I know you guys made sure to point out all the red flags but he was my first serious boyfriend. 3 years are hard to see past that I guess. I called Maya after I got home and explained everything. She tried to apologize, explaining she had a small thing for me when we first met but grew into more just a friendship. When me and now ex-boyfriend approached her she was excited to, in her words, F it out of her system. She apologized again saying she didn't want for us to break up or for this situation to be more than it was but I reassured her none of this is her fault. It looks like I'm going to make a move on Maya now, but I'm not sure if she still had the same feelings for me. My in-laws threw a baby shower for their imaginary grandson and hoped that my baby's gender result was false. Now my husband is pressuring me to apologize for walking out. I am expecting my first baby with my husband. This is the first grandchild in the family, and they said that if the baby's a boy, then we'll give him my father-in-law's name. He's dead due to cancer. I had no problem with that. This happened before we found out the gender of the baby. My husband and his family had me do things like attend prayers and other rituals before the reveal at the doctor's. I didn't like that but went with it to keep the peace. The appointment came, and it turned out to be a girl. My husband cried in the car, turned his phone off to hide from his family, and finally told them. His mom and the others made their frustration and disappointment clear, which bothered me cause my daughter deserves to be celebrated. Still, they ghosted me for days, then started coming over and visiting, constantly referring to my daughter as my son, claiming the results were false, and pretending it was a boy. I had several fights with them after they refused to stop it, and my husband sided with them despite seeing how wrong and unreasonable what they were doing was. We didn't speak for a while. My sister-in-law called to apologize and informed me she arranged a baby shower for me. I was so excited and happy. But when I arrived, I saw blue balloons and a blue cake with father-in-law's name/decorations around. I was so confused I had to sit down. Sister-in-law explained they were still hoping the gender results were false and it was a boy. I looked at my husband, and he agreed with her. I lost my temper and yelled at them all, calling them delusional and telling them to stop treating my daughter like she's unwanted and act like she doesn't exist by throwing a party for their imaginary grandson. Mother-in-law broke down crying. I took my bag and walked out immediately. They started yelling, and my husband followed me outside and started arguing about how I insulted his family and his dad's memory by acting like that. I told him to wake up and see the insanity in his family's behavior. He said they needed time to process the fact that it's a girl, not a boy, as they expected, and insisted I play along and they'll soon get over it. I said no and demanded that he take me home. He said no, so I called an Uber and left. He was fuming. He called 15 times, then texted that he won't be coming home till I got my ass over and apologized for ruining everything they've done for me and accusing them of being mentally unstable. I haven't responded yet, but he's constantly pressuring me to get right with his family before we even talk about anything else.
Why did you call off your wedding? I called off my wedding 2 weeks before I was supposed to get married. It was 2006. I was 23 years old. My then fiancé and I were together for over 5.5 years, engaged for close to 3. We had planned a church wedding, country club reception, and over 100 friends and family were invited. All of the arrangements were made, the seating charts were done, and the deposits for everything from the flowers to the music to the catering were paid. And I called it all off. The extreme guilt and shame I felt for my actions lasted years. I felt like I lied to my friends, my family, his friends and family, and most of all, to myself and to him. I felt like a fraud. I hated myself for the pain I caused to my first true love. So what happened? Well, as previously mentioned, I was in my 20s. All of my girlfriends at the time were engaged or getting married. It was the thing to do. We all wanted the fairy tale, and at that age, most young ladies will stifle the little voice in your head telling you that maybe what you're doing is not such a great idea. Unfortunately, the thought of having a husband and the romantic fantasies that go along with happily ever after are too enchanting to make you take a minute to step back and do some soul searching. I don't know if it was cold feet. I don't know if it was wisdom beyond my years, although based on some of the other choices I made in my 20s, I'm inclined to doubt it. What I do know is that I asked myself a few questions, and I listened to my own answers. Do you love him? Yes. Does he love you? Yes. Is he a good person? Yes. Do you both deserve love and happiness? Yes. Will you be happy in 10 years? No. I hated that no. I didn't want to admit it to myself for a long time, which is likely why the engagement wasn't called off much sooner. But I couldn't deny it either. It was the truth. We had very different visions for the future. We just wanted different things. In the process, I lost all of our mutual friends. I avoided going to family gatherings for fear of their judgment for being a failure. My best friend and former fiancé was now a stranger. I was the bad guy. Thankfully, this isn't a sad story. Over time, I learned to forgive myself. I learned my family never judged me, and I learned that my ex-fiancé, while devastated at the time, had also since done some of the same soul-searching I had done in 2006. We spoke on the phone a few years ago. I felt the mental anguish and guilt boiling over as I tried to say I'm sorry, but he wouldn't let me finish. He said I know, it's okay. He then went on to tell me about his son, someone he couldn't imagine his life without, and was fully aware wouldn't exist if we had ever gotten married. I told him about how happy I was living in Florida, a lifelong dream, and something that also wouldn't have ever happened if we had gotten married. We caught up on old friends, family, careers, etc. We learned from that conversation that we still love each other. We agreed that we were never meant to be. We realized that we both still cherish the time that we had together, and that we are both happy and feel fortunate that life took us in our separate directions. We also realized over the course of our conversation that literally every other friend we could think of that got married before the age of 25 was also now divorced. So as it turns out, he's still a good person, and maybe I am too. We just made some poor decisions in our 20s. Thankfully, we both got our happily ever after. Just not how either of us would have thought. My husband hates me and I can't leave. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. I was supposed to be living the happily ever after I'd always dreamed of. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, and here I am, trapped in a marriage with a man who despises me, and I can't seem to find a way out. It all started out like any fairy tale romance. We met, fell in love, got married, and for a while, everything was blissful. But slowly, The cracks started to appear in our seemingly perfect facade. The affection he once showered me with turned into icy glares and passive-aggressive jabs. Our home became a battleground, and I was left reeling from the constant emotional turmoil. I tried my best to salvage our relationship, playing the role of the perfect wife, catering to his every whim, hoping that things would go back to the way they were. But the more I tried, the more he seemed to resent me. It was like a never-ending cycle of sabotage from every angle. I would find myself questioning every move I made, every word I said. Did I upset him? Did I do something wrong? I became a shell of my former self, walking on eggshells just to avoid his wrath. Yet, no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. So, I hatched a plan, a risky move that would either set me free or end up blowing up in my face. I started researching ways to bring him down legally, to expose his true colors to the world. I was willing to tear apart our lives to ensure my own liberation. But as I delved deeper into my mission, I stumbled upon a secret that shook me to my very core. It was evidence of his involvement in some shady activities, something beyond what I had ever suspected. Suddenly, my quest for justice transformed into a fight for my own survival. Fear gripped me as I realized that leaving him wouldn't be as simple as walking out the door. I had unknowingly become entangled in a web of deceit, corrupt power, and unknown enemies. I had to be careful, I had to be smart, I had to find a way out without getting caught in the crossfire. So, I began to make my move. I started gathering evidence, making connections, and slowly, I started to piece together a plan. I knew I had to be careful, but I was determined to get out of this mess alive. But then, something unexpected happened. I was contacted by a mysterious stranger, someone who knew all the details of my situation. They promised me a way out, a way to escape from my husband and his shady activities without getting caught in the crossfire. At first, I was skeptical, but the more I heard, the more intrigued I became. Could this be my ticket to freedom? Would I finally be able to break free from the chains of my toxic marriage? Only time will tell, but I'm determined to make it out of this alive.
What is your most NSFW story about walking in on someone doing the dirty or being walked in on? XGF had a pair of tights with the crotch ripped out. She wore them under a skirt when I came for visit. She brought a blanket down to the basement den, put a movie on, and covered us up. Then she reached back, fished my erection out of my pants and guided it home while we were supposedly innocently snuggling on the couch and watching Willow. She even pre-stashed a cleanup towel under the couch cushions before I arrived. Her mom came down the stairs many times to check on us. You kids okay? Need anything? And there I was, balls deep in sweet slippery tingling ecstasy. My heart pounding as I tried to look calm and cool. GF, who'd been softly moaning and grinding herself on me a few moments before, was cool as a cucumber. No thanks, Mom. We're good. And she actually squeezed on me a few times while talking to her. Pretty sure she got off on the danger somehow. If her mom ever told us to get up right now and come with her, we'd be so busted.
You won't let me sleep? Watch my reaction. First off, I work 12-hour shifts at night 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. He does not work, he's a sod so he could get therapy. It took him a year just to do one appointment, but that's a whole other story for another day. I usually let him sleep in and I did today as well. I have barely slept the past few days because of dental pain/work and I'm 14 weeks pregnant so I'm exhausted from feeling sick and tired all the time. So, of course, at 9:20 I storm out of the house, he's still asleep, and go get coffee/breakfast for everyone. I get back obviously still upset about being so tired and it's practically 10 a.m. at this point. I lock myself in the room, I'm in a one-bedroom with 2 kids and he's not on the lease, to try to eat/sleep in peace. The kids will not stop screaming or shooting toy guns. He's just on his phone on the couch curled up. I stormed out to sit on the steps and gather my thoughts and messaged him that when I came back he could either keep the kids quiet and let me sleep, take them somewhere, or he could leave himself. I don't want to look at him when I'm so sleep deprived and he gets to sleep at night and sleep in cause it's just gonna piss me off. He stays up late playing video games so it's not like he has to stay up all night/day. He said he didn't know the kids were that loud and got pissed off saying he doesn't know where to take them. We also live in a big city and there's at least 2 libraries and parks near us, plus his mom and aunts. Mind you, he could have just kept them quiet with a little effort and stayed here. Am I truly the asshole in this situation? He was pissed off at me and yelled at the kids to hurry up. I also said if he's that damn mad to just go himself before he left, but he refused. He wouldn't say I love you when he left, which is his hallmark being pissed off move. I didn't say it either cause I don't want to play that game with him. I just want to sleep. When I wake up I'll read the replies on if I'm an asshole. Or not, and if I am I'll apologize. But right now I'm barely able to keep my eyes open to type this out. I'm so tired I might throw up. What's the most significant you just messed with the wrong person moment you've witnessed or experienced? Was tending bar at a dive when I was in college and this guy Dave came in every day, had 2 beers and left. He was a pretty quiet guy and basically just kept to himself. He always smelled of cigarettes and I talked to him once. Turns out his wife cheated on him with a 16-year-old and took custody as he does not have enough money to fight it in court. He is also an experienced martial artist. He wasn't particularly big but he wasn't small either. One day 2 rednecks came in right after we opened and started pounding beers like they were pounding deers to take home to their wife Barbara. When Dave came in, they smarted off to him as he walked by but he ignored them. I poured his first beer and told the guys to leave him alone. They didn't. Just being total dirtbags. They were pure rednecks too, the stereotypical kind you would see in a movie too. Reminded me of those guys from the SpongeBob movie when Patrick and SpongeBob are on their way to Shell City. Anyways, I told those tooth-missing rednecks I was closing their tab and they had to go. As far as they were concerned, Dave was the reason they were getting kicked out. One of the rednecks stood up and proceeded to tell Dave that he would pummel him for being such a wuss. He responded with, "I've done enough fighting in my life." The way he said it was cold. Dave had obviously seen some stuff. All of a sudden the redneck sucker punched Dave in the side of the head while he was still sitting on the bar stool. Dave casually stood up and started taking his coat off and the redneck hit him square in the cheek. A girl slap was what I would call it. Had about as much power on it as Deji boxing. Dave did not even flinch. The other redneck that was still seated said, "Damn." Not like "Damn, oh you got hit." It was more like, "Damn, Leroy, you done messed up." Dave calmly finished taking his jacket off, placed it on the back of the chair and the redneck went to throw another punch. Dave caught the blow with his hand, grabbed the redneck by the face like he was palming a basketball and in one fell swoop smushed his head against the side of the bar. Dave then dragged him through the bar, still by his face, and carried him out the back and threw him in the dumpster, again, still by his face. When Dave came back and he started over to the other mouthy redneck, who at this point was making a run for the door, and Dave Sparta kicked him in the middle of the back, bending his entire body backwards into the shape of C. The sheer momentum of the kick ended up slamming his stupid face first into a big wooden door that only opened inward. Dave came back over, calmly apologized and said he was just glad he didn't end them. Dave never paid for another beer as long as I worked there. A tampon offends you? Have fun looking at vaginas every day. I work in a fast-paced healthcare environment, and I have both male and female coworkers on my shift. We have lockers with opaque doors where we're allowed to store our things. I like keeping a box of tampons in my locker, and I've told my female coworkers if they're in a hurry and need a tampon, they're welcome to just go to my locker and take one. I got called into my boss's office the other day because a male coworker of mine complained that me keeping tampons in my locker was disgusting, and he hated that he could see the box whenever my locker was opened. My male boss told me that some men were really sensitive to this type of thing and that I should try hiding them in a different type of box so I wouldn't offend my coworkers. I asked what the point was because my coworkers would see someone reaching into a Pop-Tarts box and taking out a tampon instead of food anyway. My boss got all huffy and told me that it was for the best, and I needed to do it. Well, fine. I made a cover for my tampon box that said Mother Earth's Bloody Nutrients bars, with extra gooey, nutritious filling, with a photo of a bloody bathtub and placed it on the box. That was 2 days ago, and I saw the male coworker open my locker, trying to be sneaky, and he went pale when he read the box, got all angry. His face was priceless. I wish I took a picture. Later, I received an email from my boss that my cover wasn't funny and that I needed to take it down. So I emailed our HR person a copy of the email as well as a summary of what happened and photos of the lockers, the box, and the cover. I also suggested that the male coworker sit somewhere where he didn't have a direct line of sight to my locker if it really offended him so much. I also suggested they switch his work since he would be taking care of female patients, and it might offend him. The HR thought it was freaking hilarious and said I followed my supervisor's instructions. The guy is actually a young med student on rotation, so he got moved out of our department after this. He got moved to gynecology. I hope he's having fun looking at vaginas every day. My neighbor tried to rip me off by $10,000, so I took her to court where the judge humbled her. I was about 18 at the time, working for a security company. I was constantly working 16-hour shifts and not coming home until 8 a.m. Also, I lived with my father at the time. The time frame of this was around the 4th of July. I finally had a day off and my best friend was back in town for vacation. We decided to get together and chip in on some good old American fireworks. To be fair, I have had nothing but bad experiences with fireworks, so I had no idea how this would be any different. We got home with the fireworks and we laid them all out on the floor, sparklers, bottle rockets, cakes, and Roman candles. I say, why don't we mess around with some sparklers since it's still not dark yet? Great idea. We go into my backyard, where it hasn't rained in well over 2 months and it is extremely dry. You see the problem here? One of the little sparkies from mine and my friend's sparkler made contact with the ground and made 2 small fires that quickly spread to a large area. I ran as fast as I could to grab the garden hose and quickly started spraying down the fire. It was no use, it was spreading faster than I could spray it. I handed my friend the hose and called 911. What felt like hours was only 4 minutes and the fire was spreading to the neighbor's fence. The neighbor came outside and they were fairly calm to grab their hose and spray down the fence, along with the dead grass in her yard. The fire department finally shows up and I tell my friend only one of us needs to get in trouble, you should leave. He was reluctant to leave because he felt equally responsible, but I convinced him. I didn't want him to get in trouble and have to drop out of college. My neighbor was super chill about the entire situation at first. I told her that we could talk about replacing the fence and get some quotes to repair it. She was just super grateful that everyone was okay. About 2 hours after the fire, the arson/fire investigator came to question me about the fire. I told him the truth. I said I was in the backyard by myself playing with fireworks and accidentally lit the ground on fire. I had gotten off that day without being hit by any charges and was commended for being honest. Here is where it goes downhill very fast. About a week later I got a knock on the door from the neighbor. I opened the door and she handed me 2 pieces of paper for me to look at. There was a quote for the fence valued at around $4,000 and an estimate for lawn care valued around $6,000. These were really shady and just typed out on a Microsoft Word document, no logo or company name. She then adds, I will also be having you pay my water bill for 3 months because the new yard will need lots of water. Now the fence this woman had before was raggedy, and falling apart. Her yard? Dead grass, weeds everywhere, never mowed it. Now looking at this paper, she wants a mahogany fence, and a brand new backyard with flowers and trimmed hedges? I said I need to get an estimate myself, this doesn't feel right. She says, remember you agreed to replace my fence, and a real man keeps promises. I shut the door and called my dad to tell him about what just happened. He flipped the F out and told me, son, don't you give that SLT a single dime. He gives me the number to his handyman and tells me to take care of it. The next day I had the guy come out for an estimate, and the neighbor ran outside flailing her arms. I did not give you permission to get an estimate on my fence. Technically it separates the property line, so it's both of our fences. She calls the cops on me for having a contractor, and they ultimately can't do a single thing because I'm on my property. He quickly finishes the estimate off at $1,200. I also knew a guy who did lawn care, from my time working at the grocery store. He estimated the lawn reseeding while she was away from the house to be about $800. After I get these estimates I give copies to the woman and she is having none of it. I don't know these people. I don't want them near my house, they're probably really crappy contractors. I said no, I know them personally. They are really nice people and do great work. She shut the door in my face and I went on my way. I ended up working a 16-hour shift that night and got home at 8 a.m., and this woman came knocking on my door at 9 a.m. and demanded I speak to her. I explained, I would really love to do this, but I just got home and I have to be back at work in less than 5 hours. I need to sleep. She goes, what kind of lazy a-hole sleeps in until 2 p.m. At this point I had about lost it, and told her you can either accept my $2,000 for my quotes or kiss my SS and get nothing. She stood there for a while with her mouth gaped open, but she accepted my offer and planned to meet down at the notary the next morning. I spent that night after I got off work, writing a contract and gathering the $2,000 in cash. The next morning I wake up, and grab this contract to meet down at the notary. I was thrilled to finally be done with this beach, and never speak to her again. I waited for her for over 3 hours and she didn't show up. I get a call from her saying, I'm sorry, the $2,000 isn't enough, I'm having my guys start work on this project, and you will be paying me full price. Oh really? After that I did not say a single word to her, and I watched for a few months as these guys turned her backyard into an oasis, complete with a small pond, brand new sod and flowers, the whole 9 yards. Come to find out she had plans to remodel these things for a long time, and was just waiting for the opportunity to go through with it. Also at this time, she used her remodel funds to go on a trip to Hawaii. You know how I found out about this? She was bragging about it on the neighborhood Facebook group, and didn't know I was in it. I have a different Facebook name than my real name. You ready for revenge? Now 4 months after the fire and all the remodels, I get served papers to go to court for $10,300. At 18 years old I'm having to hire a lawyer to work my case. When we finally do get into court I lay everything out. The quotes, being harassed multiple times, not showing up after agreeing to a deal, not wanting me to get my own quotes, required by law, and her bragging about screwing me out of money, and I have proof of all of this. The judge looked at her and said, ma'am, with all due respect, you're out of your mind. Not only did this young man tell the truth of what happened, he offered to pay you more than he was supposed to. Your lawn was already dead before the fire occurred, therefore he is only responsible for the fence of $1,200. I will also deduct from this his lawyer fees, $800. So I burned this woman's fence down and all I'm having to give her is $400? Cool. She took a huge financial loss from this, not sure how much the Hawaii trip cost her, but she was in serious debt. She ended up having to sell the house because of it and moved into a smaller house. Haven't heard anything from her since.
Today I effed up by giving my brother the bees and flowers talk. I, 22F, have always been close with my siblings. I'm the eldest of 12 siblings, both mom and dad's side. I'm their only child and they've had children with other people after. The second eldest, my brother, just turned 16, and I caught him watching adult films on my laptop. I don't want to delve into the kind of adult films that it was, but it was sketchy. Anyway, I know he hasn't had a girlfriend yet, since I consider myself close to him and I sure thought he felt the same way. 2 weeks ago, to save him the embarrassment from letting my mom and stepdad know, I decided to give him the intimacy talk myself, especially reminding him about consent and using a condom no matter what. I told him he could ask me questions if he had any in the future. Now, he's asking me how he should pleasure a girl or how to make a girl orgasm. I've answered as matter-of-factly as I can, but friends have told me to stop and that it can fuel something else. I think they're just being disgusting to think that, and honestly, I just want to be a good sister. Now today the implication of that are that my brother apparently thought that me being a good sister was free reign for him to think of me in a not-so-familial level. I never realized being a good older sister would have me end up this way. So here's what happened after the talk. I thought all's well that ends well. At first he was secretive about it, until I found out the girl he got into a relationship with had the same name as me. If that wasn't weird enough, we both had glasses, too. I thought it was just a funny coincidence at first. My friends were the ones who pointed out a few other similarities, but for me at that time, it just meant that my brother thought of me as a good older sister, so he's modeling his ideal girl? I don't know why I was making excuses really. Then they broke up and he had 2 more girlfriends after. My friends kept pointing out other similarities I had with those girls, too, but again I didn't think much of it. Until yesterday. Another thing that happened in the past year was that my brother grew taller than me. He was slightly smaller than me before, but now my forehead just sits right above his shoulder when we stand up. For family photos recently, he liked hugging me from behind and he kept asking me to rest my head on his shoulders. It was my stepdad's birthday yesterday and after a family photo, he kissed me on the top of my head. I felt cold for a moment, but he just smiled at me. I was beginning to feel nervous for some reason but I ignored it. After lunchtime he offered to drive me to Dad's place as I live with my dad when I have university classes, because it's nearer, and my PC is over there. Anyway, my brother stopped the car near a Krispy Kreme and told me to order his treat. He looked at me and smiled and that's when I started to feel genuinely scared. Because I saw the way he looked at me, and that's no way to look at your sister. I never considered myself stupid or dense, but I didn't know it would go this far without me realizing. I know we didn't live together for the first decade of my life but we're half siblings. We came out of the same womb? Even if our fathers are different and we have different surnames, I always thought it was fine and that I raised them to think of me as their big sister. Now everything is flashing to me. All those times he told me that my stepdad's last name would fit better with my first names as it starts with the same letter. Or all those videos he sent me of siblings and dating and him as long me if ever we got on those videos what people would think. Even all those times he kept intimidating my exes, we all thought he was being a cute brother for God's sake. I feel like a failure as a sister and a child. I feel guilty like I've led this to happen when I know logically that I didn't. He's been texting me innocently, asking me what I'm doing, but I'm now so scared to respond. I feel like anything I do will make this blow out of proportion. I don't want to tell our mom, or either of our dads. I get along great with my stepdad and I don't want to even think about what he'll think considering he's a policeman. I've never felt this stupid.
Have you ever met an internet friend in real life? I used to play Counter-Strike 1.6 with one of the funniest and most lively guys I've ever met. He was a linchpin for half a dozen other guys in a friendship group that he welcomed me into. They lived about 200 miles south of me in the south of England. For several years we talked and played games together. He would brighten my day. I've never loved a friend like I loved him. Before I met him I had no idea he was sick. Like, really sick. He had muscular dystrophy for which there is no cure and is a progressively debilitating disease. His form started by paralyzing his legs, and working its way up to his arms and eventually his lungs. It wasn't until a few days before I had arranged for my first ever trip down there that he told me about it. It didn't faze me in the slightest. It made me want to go see him even more. I only saw him in real life twice before he died about a year later. I regret that I couldn't go to his funeral. It was too far away and I couldn't make it. I met my best friend through Minecraft, never made friends in this and I just wanted to play with someone so I complimented this girl's skin. We started talking. She was American, I'm Polish and my English sucked. We moved to Skype and at first I mostly typed, but later on she started teaching me English somehow by talking with me. She was 1 year older. We knew each other for almost a year and I was staying up all night just to talk to her and her friends that she introduced to me. She was also depressed so we talked with each other and she was the first person that truly listened to me. We had plans of visiting each other. And then our mutual friend told me she took her own life. 4 years passed by and now at least I can talk about it and not cry.
My sister flirts with all my friends and my girlfriend. This is what really happened. My sister Haley is a very open and flirty person. She's never put a label on her sexuality but she has said she's attracted to everyone. Ever since we were in high school, she'd often flirt with girls I was interested in. She'd also flirt with my friends when they'd come over to hang out. Sometimes Haley would even come into my room without knocking just to talk to them. It was very uncomfortable and some of my friends even stopped coming over to my house because of it. This made me really angry and I told our parents, but they'd always say I'm being homophobic and to leave her alone so she'd always get away with it. A few months after she graduated, she moved out of the house and I haven't had to deal with her flirting with my friends anymore. 7 months ago I met my now girlfriend Layla and we really hit it off. We've been together a little over 4 months. One thing to note about Layla is that she's really shy, so she never voices any concerns until after the fact. Well, I really wanted her to meet my parents so we set up a quick dinner at a nice restaurant on Tuesday night. Without even telling me, my parents invited Haley. For the better part of the dinner, she would constantly flirt with my girlfriend. She'd give Layla compliments about her clothing, body, facial features, and even offer her number multiple times. My parents would just laugh along with her antics saying it's just how she normally is. But I could clearly see Layla was uncomfortable so I paid my side of the bill and took her home. When we got to her house, I asked if I could spend the night and she said yes. And that's where I've been for the past few days. My parents and Haley have been blowing up my phone, calling me all sorts of names, which has me thinking I was in the wrong. I haven't answered any of my sister's messages but I told my mom where I am. When I asked Layla about it, she said the compliments were nice at first but she got uncomfortable. So am I the a-hole for making a big deal out of my sister flirting with my girlfriend? Edit. My parents think I'm an a-hole for ignoring my sister's messages, and an even bigger a-hole for walking out of the restaurant. They say I was entitled and rude. Does this make me an a-hole? Update. Friday night I messaged my mom and dad to let them know I wouldn't be conversing with them unless Layla was given an apology. Up to this point, that still hasn't been received and I don't think it ever will. I also let them know I'd be stopping by on Saturday to pick up my things from the house. Well, Saturday morning I went over to the house and brought my girlfriend's dad to help me. Sitting on the porch was my sister who told me immediately she wanted to talk. We go inside and sit down, which is when she says she has to tell me something without me freaking out. Basically, my sister told me she has had feelings for me since high school, which is when I started going to the gym and slimming out a lot more. She said the main reason she flirted with all my friends is because she wanted to divert her attraction somewhere else. According to her, this is also the reason she moved out so quickly, because she couldn't stand being around me and knowing she couldn't have me. I just left. I didn't get any of my stuff, and honestly I don't know if I'll go back to get it. I blocked my sister on everything as soon as I got back to my girlfriend's house, and my mom kept messaging me telling me to apologize for walking out again. I don't know how to feel. I'm absolutely disgusted. I feel like throwing up all the time, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to get up and go to work tomorrow like everything's normal. I haven't told my girlfriend or her dad yet, and I don't know if I'm going to. I have no idea if my mom or dad knows, but even thinking about it makes my head hurt. This is so much worse than I thought it was. What the F? I wish this was fake.
What was the most messed up thing you saw in school? These 3 girls used to pick on my first girlfriend and first love. She was smart and funny, and one of the best things about going to school. She didn't tell anyone she was being bullied, and it went on for a very long time apparently. They put cigarettes out on her. Put gum in her hair. Demanded money. Tripped her up. She finally had had enough and wrote to her parents about what she had endured. All of the nasty things these 3 high school girls had done to her. She named names and left her diary with more details on their bed. She then went to her parents' closet, took her father's rifle and pulled the trigger. She was 15 years old. She was loved by many of us. I came to school late. I had missed the assembly about her. I walked into my class to everyone in tears. Her desk had flowers on it. Her best friend told me while in tears. I don't remember much of the rest of that day at school. I took the bus home. I remember that. I ate in silence and went to my room without talking to my parents. I cried. I cried till I slept. I don't think I have cried as hard or long as that night since the funeral was hard. The whole school was there and most of our town. Too many things going on for me to properly process. Her parents couldn't get any air, so I could barely offer my condolences. A few other friends within the next year ended their lives as well. One due to grief of losing our friend. I had lost too much. I kept in touch with several of my friends, but our circle was never the same. The 3 girls and their families left our school after being shunned by our community. I left that school shortly after. I begged my parents to let me change schools. I couldn't walk those halls anymore. Going made me physically ill. I couldn't find the light in those days. I spent many hours of my early teens leaning on her grave and telling her about my life. How it was going, what had happened. I used to ride my bike an hour each way. I've since made it a point to visit her anytime I've gone back. I've not been back for 15 years, but I could walk you there from any gate in the cemetery. 27 years have passed since I've seen her smile, but I can still see it. She never got to see the internet, mobile devices or texting. She would have loved Google. She loved being right and would scour the library for information on topics she loved. My wife told me someone else is her soulmate. My wife, Em, met her best friend, Chuck, in high school. They became close friends and Chuck came out to Em as gay. Em was supportive. A year or so later Chuck came out to his parents. They disowned him and kicked him out, and Chuck ended up living with Em and her parents for the rest of high school. Em and I started dating after college, and she told me all about Chuck and how close they were and how he was like a brother. I met Chuck and we got along and became friends. Chuck is a good guy. At the time Chuck was dating a guy, they ended up moving in together about the same time that Em and I got engaged. Em and I have been married for 5 years now. I took a job that takes up a lot of my time, but Em said she was okay with it as it was only for a year. In March Chuck caught his boyfriend cheating. He was devastated. Em immediately told him he could move in with us. I was fine with him moving in, but not happy that Em didn't even discuss it with me first. Chuck was pretty broken up and Em was giving him lots of love and attention. I was fine with it, because I know how much she loves Chuck and he did need her. I also did my best to support him and make him feel loved. For a while this was fine, but as time went on Em has continued to pour all of her attention into Chuck. Sometimes I get home from work and neither of them are there, and I found out they went to a movie or out to dinner together. I don't think there is anything romantic or intimate between them, but it has been annoying that I get left out of all the plans. The past few weeks several things have happened. The 3 of us went to a party and someone joked about Chuck being our third wheel and Em said Chuck is not the third wheel. I said what? And she said I've known Chuck longer than I've known you. A week or so after that Em and Chuck went out dancing one night. I had to work the next day so I stayed home. I woke up at about 3 a.m. and Em was not in bed. I went and found her and Chuck cuddled up on the couch asleep with the TV on. Both of those things made me uncomfortable. I also realized I had been working so much I was just sort of letting Em and Chuck plan everything, and I had not planned a date night in a while. I decided I needed to be more active and so I planned a date night for last Friday. When I first told Em she was excited, as we have not been on a date just the 2 of us in a while. Friday I got home at 6:30 and Em and Chuck were not there. I took a shower and got ready. About 7:15 I finally called Em, as we had reservations at 8. She answered and when I asked where she was she said her and Chuck had gone shopping and were getting some dinner. I was kind of stunned and asked about our date. She laughed and said, "Oh, I forgot." Oh well. And that was that. She didn't even invite me to join them. So, a point I should make here, my dad was very controlling of my mom. So I've tried to never be controlling of Em or tell her what to do. I also tend to shut down when I get angry. When Em forgot our date I was mad so I didn't say anything right then. But I knew I needed to address how I was feeling. So later that evening I told her we needed to talk. I had written down some things so I could stay focused. I started by saying that I loved Chuck and he was always welcome in our home, but that I felt like our marriage was suffering and we needed to work on us. Em blew up. She thought I was attacking Chuck. I guess I didn't word things well, and she started defending him and attacking me. We have never had a big fight before, we always talk and work things out. I was stunned that she was attacking me. She said some awful things. Then she said Chuck is my soulmate and you just have to get used to that. I just shut down. I didn't even know how to process that. I love Em more than anything in the world, but in that moment I realized she loves Chuck more than she loves me. I thought Em and I were soulmates, but to hear her say she considers someone else her soulmate has been devastating. I don't remember the rest of the talk. She huffed off after a while and slept on the couch. Her and Chuck left together on Saturday and were gone most of the day. When they got back she acted like nothing had happened. On Sunday she even made a small joke and batted her eyes at me, something she does when she's flirting with me. Normally I love it, but this time it just made me sick. I told her this was a busy week at work and I was just going to stay at a hotel near the job site, something I've done a few times before, so I haven't seen her since Sunday night. I don't know what to do. Maybe I checked out too much and haven't given her enough attention. But how do I move forward knowing she will never love me as much as I love her? I kicked a couple's off-leash pit bull in the face. I took Oates, my 8-year-old lab, Jack Russell Terrier mix to the park this past weekend to walk a few laps and enjoy the sunshine. We do this every so often, as it's less than a mile walk from home, so it's our go-to spot when the weather is nice and I have some free time. There is an open field adjacent to walking trail, with playground equipment and tables that we have to pass by to get to the walking trail. As we walk up to the trail entrance, Oates is super stoked, as usual, taking in all the new smells, so he doesn't notice the off-leash pit bull romping around in the open. I ignored my husband so much that he went away without telling me. Carla, I'm 6 months pregnant with mine and my husband Harry's first child. During this pregnancy, I've been very exhausted every day and would usually come home from work and go to bed an hour later. Then I'd wake up at midnight and reheat what Harry had made us for dinner. For context, I've been part of a huge work project that's been going on for months and I've been extremely overworked. On top of this, my husband doesn't have a job at this moment and isn't looking for one unless I remind him. I've been working overtime to get as much money as I can before maternity leave. Our anniversary was on the 6th of August and I'd asked him if we could have a romantic dinner at home and then snuggle up to watch TV under a warm blanket. I thought it was a wonderful idea since I was too tired to go out and because I knew that Harry was doing most, if not all of the household chores. However, he seemed a little annoyed when he agreed, but I thought nothing of it. The next morning Harry seemed quite cold towards me and barely looked me in the eyes. Once I got home from work he wasn't there, but that was normal since he could have been out with friends or at an interview, and so I went to sleep. I woke up at 11 that night to see that I was still alone in the house. So I checked my phone. I had about 8 missed calls from Harry and a long text. I'm summarizing, but the text read, I understand how tired you are because of this pregnancy and you having to work extra hours most days, but I'm over being ignored every day and having a 5-minute conversation with you every so often. You expect me to do all the housework and plan our boring anniversary alone? I'm really annoyed, so I'm staying with a friend tonight. Text me when you see this. Of course I called him and texted him about being sorry and wanting to talk, but I never got an answer. In the morning I called my boss about having a day off and spent most of it waiting for Harry and planning my apology. However, when he came home, he silently handed me a rose and a card saying that he loves me but needs a few days away from me to figure out what he's going to say or do. Then those days became a week. This part happened on the 13th. I messaged him every day and he would constantly say that he needed one more day or just another night at his friend's to figure this all out. But on the 13th I decided to go to the friend's home he was staying at to confront him. So I drove over nearly 30 minutes away, and banged on the door so hard that I could hear it echo from inside. By this point, I realized that I should have put more effort into our relationship. But he also should have talked to me about this instead of running away. Harry's friend came to the door and was confused but pleased to see me. He seemed a little on edge as I talked to him. He had to break the silence every so often with comments about my pregnancy and how he couldn't wait to meet the baby. Finally we stopped talking and I practically demanded to see Harry, saying that I wanted to apologize, but also explain how childish he was by hiding from me. The thing that I found absolutely hilarious, but actually not at all, was that his friend said that Harry wasn't there and had left for Ireland on the 9th. Ireland? To say I was absolutely beyond furious and extremely confused would be such an understatement. His friend invited me in, let me down to talk. Turns out that Harry had told his friend of our problems and had come up with a solution of going on a holiday as a couple to sort everything out and learn to love each other again, in Harry's words. So, of course, his friend thought that this was a lovely idea and helped him to book the flight on the evening of the 5th, the first time he had stayed at his friend's house since it was a last-minute booking. Harry's friend had stayed up with him for quite a while before they found a flight who was taking a few more passengers due to cancelled tickets. His friend then explained how he'd been confused when I arrived at the door, but didn't want to say anything about the holiday in case it had ended early due to us arguing. Harry's return ticket is booked for the 20th of August. I am just so angry and quite heartbroken, to be completely honest. I messaged him the moment his friend had finished talking and Harry only responded an hour ago with nothing more than had to figure things out. Sorry. So now I'm home alone again and trying to figure out what I'm going to do or say when he gets home. Anyway, thanks for reading about how my life is going. Parents, what's a story your kids told you that you thought was just a lie until you later found out actually happened? My wife teaches kindergarten, and my son attends kindergarten at the same school. I brought them a tire, the size of a monster truck tire, to play on in their yard. Don't ask why, weird idea, but they loved it. So we cleaned it up, scrubbed it, and I drilled holes in it so the water would drain when it rained. Few days ago it's just me and my son. I asked how his day was and he said, blah blah fun, blah blah ate lunch, blah blah fun, blah blah Xavier got his finger stuck in the tire, blah blah fun. So I ask him to back up, and he just repeats that his friend Xavier got his finger stuck in the tire in one of the holes we drilled for draining the water. I told him that sounded sad, and he said, yes it was and it rained. So I thought, poor kid. So I said, wow, poor kid, did you get him a raincoat? And he said, no daddy, we didn't want to get near him because he pooped himself. So I'm thinking, really poor kid. So I said, wow, really poor kid, did the teachers help him? And he said something like, he was out there a long time. Then it devolved and I really couldn't get any more information out of him. So I felt guilty about this kid, cause I did drill the holes in the tire, but eventually it slips my mind. Wife gets home, we have dinner, etc. But I forgot about it till I'm talking to her way after the kids have gone to bed. Then suddenly it pops into my head, so I say to her, so, our son told me one of the kids got his finger stuck in the tire tota. And she just bursts out laughing. I sat there dumbfounded. Then she explained to me Xavier isn't one of the kids, he's a teaching assistant who is supposed to take care of the delayed kid in the class, except his kid didn't show up, so he just played with the other students all day. Apparently this 25-year-old guy was sitting on the tire and thought it was a smart idea to try to jam his finger into one of the holes, which makes it crazy. Thinking a little kid could get their finger in almost made sense, but for an adult finger it's almost a miracle he could get it in without breaking a bone. Anyways, apparently he got his finger in there and couldn't pull it out, and they couldn't pick up or move the tire, and the guy was stuck out there for hours. And yes, it did rain, and yes, he really did shit himself. My wife said all the kids kept watching him out the window as it rained. Eventually they called emergency and she said she was gone at lunch when they arrived, but Xavier was gone when she got back and the guy didn't come back to school that week. We still don't know how they got his finger out. People who sleep naked when it has backfired? This happened when I was 12. I was in bed sleeping. When I woke up, one of my dogs poked me with his nose, which means he either has to poop or barf. So even though I was settled in for the night, I got up, put on my bathrobe, and walked outside with both my dogs. I live in a canyon in the foothills at the top of a hill. We get coyotes a lot, so going out with the dogs off the leash at night wasn't very bright. One of my dogs caught sight of a coyote at the bottom of the hill and took off after it. I have two dogs. One floppy, loving and dumb named Noodle, and one pointy, lean and a little aloof named Jax. Noodle is the one that took off after the coyote, but the pointy dog didn't really notice as he was busy doing his thing. I start to hear a bunch of snarling and see multiple coyotes surrounding Noodle. I go back into the house and start screaming. Coyotes got Noodle in no more than 10 seconds. My dad is sprinting out the door butt naked with a 9mm in his hand chasing after the Noodle. So I go running after him down my driveway and into the road. As I go floundering past, robe blowing in the breeze like a majestic cape, Jax finally notices. He's lean, he's black, he's fast, and a mysterious mix of German Shepherd and something else that makes him look a lot like Anubis. Anyway, at this point, the coyotes, there must be half dozen of them, are all yipping and howling. Noodle has gone completely silent. I'm convinced they've nabbed her, even though she's bigger than most coyotes. So Jax takes off and soon is even ahead of my dad. I continue to witness perhaps the most ridiculous and badass thing I've ever seen. Jax makes first contact and absolutely decks one of the coyotes. He starts fighting like he's possessed. My dad quickly follows and just starts blasting with his 9mm. In a matter of 30 seconds, all of the coyotes are either deceased or have taken off into the wilderness. I go and get Noodle, who is absolutely terrified but is okay. I start comforting her and petting her, trying to get her to calm down. Jax and my dad are still on edge, making sure none of the coyotes come back. All of this noise had woken the neighbors because I heard a window open and I saw our neighbor Todd peek his head out. He looked at the scene below and was just in shock. In hindsight, seeing my naked dad with his 9mm and Jax standing in the middle of 3 dead coyotes must have been quite a shock. He calls out to my dad, "Dave, what in the world just happened?" My dad turns and yells back, "Coyotes got Noodle. But we got her back. Sorry about the noise, Terry." "No problem, David. I would have done the same. Might have put some clothes on first, though." It seemed at that moment was when my dad realized he was entirely naked. We immediately walked back to our house and went to sleep. What's the most badass thing you've accidentally said in the heat of the moment? At a family vacation, my grandmother was giving me grief for not remembering her birthday after telling me it was the password to her iPhone as she wanted me to take a picture with it, which is why I needed the password. While she was distracted, I opened up the settings, changed her password to my birthdate, and then set her phone down. 15 minutes later, she's trying to get into her phone and it's not working. Suspecting mischief, she grumpily asks me if I've changed the password to her phone in front of our entire family. I admit that I did. "Well, what is it?" she asked impatiently. "It's my birthdate," I replied. She sat there in stunned silence for about 15 seconds, not being able to remember my birthday before our family exploded laughing. Was a good time.
You move on with life. My dad disappeared out of nowhere at age 8 and I didn't see him until almost 10 years later when I was already a man. My mother always told me she had no idea where he was, what he was doing, or why he disappeared. This effed with me heavily growing up. Without a father, Father's Day always sucked. Ended up clinically depressed etc. Not knowing why or where really effed with my brain.
Fast forward 9 years, my mother comes out and tells me my dad is on the phone calling. It's really surreal. I can't believe it. He's actually on the phone. I talk to him. I am in total shock. Emotions don't even come. I'm just in total shock. I don't even remember what we said. Turns out my dad was wanted for a white-collar crime and owed my mom money and child support. She got pissed at him one day when I was 8 and told the cops where to find him. He was arrested and put in jail for the white-collar crime, and that was why he disappeared. When he got released, he called me that day 9 years later, and my mother never told me the whole story or why he was gone until after that phone.
What about the opposite sex confuses you? I mean, I've been in a few relationships, and sometimes I feel like I'm just banging my head against a wall trying to understand what the hell is going on with women. One thing that really grinds my gears is this whole bleeding cycle crap. Like, seriously, why the hell does that have to be a thing? I mean, I get that it's a natural process and all, but it just seems so damn inconvenient. And sometimes it seems like women are using it as an excuse to be moody or bitchy. I don't know, maybe I'm just being insensitive, but it confuses the poop out of me. But you know what's even more confusing? When women play these weird mind games. Like, why the hell do they say one thing and then do another? Or why do they expect us to read their minds and just magically know what they want? It's like, come on, just be straight up with me, and don't even get me started on this whole class thing. It seems like women are always judging guys based on their social status or how much money they make. It's like, we're not all born with a silver spoon in our mouths, you know? And just because a guy isn't rolling in dough or driving a fancy car doesn't mean he's not worth your time. But you know what? Despite all these confusing things about women, I can't help but be fascinated by them. There's just something about the opposite intimacy that draws me in, even when I don't understand it. Maybe it's the mystery or the excitement of trying to figure them out. Whatever it is, it keeps me coming back for more. Wife was on the phone with her brother at 2:30 a.m. and I confronted her. My wife and I have been married for 7 years and are having issues as of late. Issues best summarized as mutual discontentment. We've been talking through them and communicating. We sometimes sleep in separate rooms, even when things are chill. Tonight was one of those nights where I slept in the guest room and I woke up thirsty at 2:30 a.m. I'm about to scoop out some ice when I hear a voice coming from the bedroom. At first I assumed my daughter was scared by storms and stood next to the door to listen and make sure everything was okay. When I stand next to the door I can hear my wife talking to someone on the phone. I can't quite make out what's being said, but it's my wife's voice and a man's voice on the phone that I can't recognize. I stand by the door for a minute because I'm suspicious/confused. Again, it's 2:30 am. After hearing them talk for a few minutes I eventually resumed what I was about to do, which was scoop some ice for my water. Once I've scooped the ice, a noisy activity, I walk back to the door and the voices have stopped. I open the door to the bedroom and give a casual, "Hey, you good?" And she says, "Yeah, the storm's keeping me up." I say I could hear voices from the kitchen. She says it was TikTok. I say I could very obviously tell that you were talking with someone on the phone. Who were you talking to? She says, "Oh, I was talking with my brother." At this point I ask, why wouldn't you say you were talking to your brother when I asked if you were good? She claims that she said that she was on TikTok because she's always on TikTok when she talks to people, to which I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. If you're on TikTok it's gonna really interfere with a phone conversation. This goes back and forth and she gets annoyed. I ask to see her phone cause poop just smells weird. She says no because I have no privacy. You can already see my location on the location front. We share locations on our phones and a couple of times I've checked to see if she's coming home, but she'll be chilling at a park. One time for like 2 hours. I confronted her about that, but the tone was definitely one of concern and worry. Anyways, her posture was quite defensive. I was asking her what was going on and claimed that she didn't say she was talking to her bro cause I'd give her poop for being up so late. This is all fresh and weird. Outside perspective much appreciated. Tia.
I slapped an obnoxious kid across the face because he shot my cat. I regret nothing when he collapses on his SS and starts crying. A couple of weeks ago I was babysitting my best friend's brother. I usually can't stand kids, but my friend was on the verge of a breakdown, so I offered to take the kid off his hands for a bit so he could finish his art school project and relax. Before anyone asks, they don't come from the most stable of families. Their parents are divorced and are barely around to take care of either of them, hence why I offered in the first place, because I know my friend has been running himself thin lately. Anyway, I took the kid back to my house because there isn't much to do around here. I'm a broke student. On the trip back he was already acting obnoxious, asking me if I ate my dog because I'm Asian and referring to me as a female every single time we talked. My mom was out running errands and meeting with some of her friends, so it was up to me to watch him. I asked him if he wanted to play a board game or some video games, and he said no. I asked if he wanted to go kick a football around since I live in the countryside and there's plenty of space to play around, and he said no. At this point I had no idea what the kid wanted, so I just kinda let him explore the house a bit, to which he stumbled across my BB gun. Now, I'm from Europe, which is pretty self-explanatory. You don't come across BB guns, airsoft rifles, and such often, so naturally he was fascinated with it. I explained that I don't use it to shoot even though I do have pellets, came with a gun, never use them, and that I only keep it around for cosplay reasons. I told him he couldn't shoot it because it was still a semi-dangerous piece of equipment. He threw a full-on tantrum at the ripe age of 11, screaming and crying, yelling and hitting poop, to which after 5 whole minutes of this I relented. I told him that he could shoot a few as long as he aimed at a big tree in the garden, and only under my supervision. He agrees. I set up the gun. Now, I have 5 cats. One of them is a 12-year-old senior cat who spends his days lying around the garden under patches of sun. He's not slow per se, but he definitely isn't what he used to be. I take the kid out and direct him to the tree. He fires and all's good. My senior cat is lounging close by behind the kid, sleeping away and not bothering anyone. The kid turns to me and asks for some water, to which I say sure, don't fire, I'll be back. As I'm filling up the glass for him, I hear a loud yowl, Like a really, really loud pained yell. I immediately dash outside and see the little cunt pointing the BB gun at my senior cat who's lying there essentially screeching in agony. He'd shot my cat and the absolute smug smirk on his face made me absolutely lose it. I stormed up to him and slapped him right across the face while simultaneously screaming at him. The waste of space had the gall, the audacity, to collapse on his ass and start crying and hiccuping. I scooped my cat up and cradled him, choosing and petting him as I called my mum and explained the situation, to which he came rushing back home, probably broke a couple of red lights, and took the cat to the vet. He's fine, the pellet didn't perforate into him or damage any organs, just got wedged halfway in the skin, painful and costly nonetheless, whilst it landed on me to take the crying kid back home. Nonetheless, there's a reason my best friend is my best friend. He absolutely lost it on the kid who thought his big brother was gonna comfort him and tell him he didn't do jack poop.
At what age is it okay to let your kids stay home alone for the weekend, in your opinion? That is a question that has been plaguing parents for generations. There is no simple answer. It depends on the maturity level of the child and the trust you have in them to make good decisions. I have some strong opinions on this topic based on my own experiences. When I was growing up, my parents were incredibly strict. I wasn't allowed to do anything without their express permission. Even when I turned 16, the slightest deviation from their strict rules meant punishment. So when I turned 17, I begged my parents to let me stay home alone for the weekend while they went out of town. After days of pleading, they caved in, and I was ecstatic. Everything was going great initially. I had the whole house to myself, and it was amazing. I spent the first night bumping my music as loud as I wanted and eating pizza for every meal. However, things took a turn for the worse on the second day. I got a call from my friend, Matt. He was having a house party, and he begged me to come join. I knew my parents would never approve, but I didn't care. I was 17, and this was my first opportunity to prove that I was responsible enough to make my own decisions. So, I went to the party. It turned out to be one of those wild house parties that everyone talks about. I drank too much, and before I knew it, I was sobering up on a couch, naked and alone, with an assailant from the party. The events of that weekend still haunt me to this day. My parents were furious, and rightfully so. They had trusted me to be responsible, and I had let them down. From that day forward, they never trusted me enough to leave me alone in the house again, even when I was well into my 20s. So, when it comes to the question of at what age it is okay to leave your kids home alone for the weekend, my answer is simple. It depends on the child. If they have proven themselves to be responsible and trustworthy individuals, then maybe it's okay at 16 or 17. But, if they're like me, they're still not trustworthy at 30. Divorce lawyers, what's the worst way you've seen someone flock over their spouse? When I was a kid, my parents got divorced. My mom met a guy on the internet and left my dad for him. My sisters and I were all teenagers, and being that my mom had never really been around, decided that we all wanted to live with him. We all had to write a letter stating our wishes, and it was understood that we would stay with him. My mom didn't even seem to care. Additionally, my dad had this retirement account from his old job. He wasn't rich at all and had worked his ass off for everything he'd ever had. When he got hurt on the job, he could have sued, but was promised that in exchange for him not suing, they'd keep him around. Instead, they canned him, and he left with about $100,000, I think, in a 401k type account that he'd been saving for nearly 30 years. Lastly, my dad had his house. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath brick house that was all of about 800 SF. It wasn't much at all, but my dad loved the place. My mom couldn't stand that house and wanted to move for as long as I could remember. That was another contentious subject that led to the divorce. He'd been paying on it forever, and when he left his old job, he took out a small chunk and paid it off. Anyway, their separation is progressing, and it's understood we're living with him. She was so in love with this internet guy that she didn't care. He was in school halfway around the country, and she was going to move there to be with him. We knew we'd get by just fine. They seemed amicable, and it was understood how this would all play out. The day in court finally comes, and instead of what we all assumed, even my dad's lawyer, she goes to the court with all these crazy claims. He was an abusive alcoholic, he beat us and my mom nightly, he was crazy, and no one would be safe in his care. My mom got full custody. She got 50% of his house and 50% of his retirement account. My dad was stunned. That judgment would basically bankrupt him. In order for him to keep the house, he'd essentially have to clean out his retirement account and give her everything. The night of their divorce, I went over to see him. He was almost catatonic. He just stared off in space the entire time and would mumble whenever I asked him a question. I've never seen anyone like that ever. My birthday was 2 days away, and I asked if he wanted to do something for my birthday, and he just answered with, "Your mom has full custody. I will if she allows me to see you." I asked if I could drive his old truck to school, since I didn't yet have a car, and he just said no, that I needed to call my mom and have her pick me up. So that's what I did. And the next day in school, the day before my birthday, I'm sitting in our lunchroom when I hear, "Hey, isn't that your grandpa?" from a buddy of mine. I look over and see my grandpa and a cop making their way across the lunchroom toward me. They told me to grab my stuff, and in the office I found my sister there as well. We rode home with them, where we were also met by my little sister, and that's where they told us that our dad had killed himself, shortly after I left the previous night. To make matters worse, it all happened so quickly that nothing had been finalized. My mom dropped all her paperwork and legally became a widow and got everything: house, retirement, and his insurance policy. She also got Social Security benefits for us, a fact we didn't find out until much later. She basically took all the money and moved across the country with her new man, leaving us to care for ourselves for the most part. And to this day, when asked about raising us, she'll spin this story of a young widow, doing her best to raise 3 kids on her own. What is the biggest mistake you made while in the mood? Today I got a text on Instagram from a girl who said she saw me from Bumble in one of my Snapchat. I, being the idiot, gave it. Things started to get steamy and she said she was 19 in a snap and I said I am 20 and then she sent an explicit photo. She had on Harry Potter socks and this sent me through the roof as I love Harry Potter. She asked for one back and I sent it back and this went on a few times until she texted me all these photos of my photos in our chat saying she'll leak them on the internet and to everyone I follow on Instagram. These were not regular explicit photos. I took ones with my Harry Potter pillow covering my junk as well as one where I was sticking my tongue out asking to lick her feet in the text portion of the snap. I was terrified and she demanded money and made a group chat saying she has something important to say to everyone on Instagram. It included my family members and friends. I was shaking and my heart was racing. I'm scared and I first went to my sister and she said it's okay and I shouldn't give her money. I don't work because of university placement. I said no to giving money on Snapchat and she asked if I was sure because I am. She leaked all my stuff on the group chat and said she'll send them to everyone I know and ruin my life and career. She made a Twitter post on me saying I sent a young girl photos and asked for intimacy, which I obviously did not. I filed a report against her online and I'm scared about what my day will be like tomorrow. My family will know and I don't know what to say. What if she sends everyone my pictures? I feel like the earth should just swallow me whole but I don't know what to do with my life now and what will happen tomorrow. I'm scared. What will everyone think of me and how will I even explain this situation to them?